King Kong ain't got shit on me. Aha. That is a famous quote from Denzel because we're talking about Denzel Washington and his new movie, Highest to Lowest. This is Alex from Los Angeles.
And this is Karan from Los Angeles. Welcome to Movies That Shaped Us. We're two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but were both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we cover a filmmaker who shaped our love of movies. Join us as we explore why they matter and review the three movies in the filmography that made the biggest impact on us. I feel like we just have big ones now.
I
Or
know,
maybe we're
yeah.
choosing the big ones. Yeah.
The big ones are back. It's a big year of big ones, and Denzel is one of the biggest movie stars of all time, long career, and someone I grew up loving since the '90s when he was probably like just kind of was breaking through as like a major Hollywood A-lister. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about him a little bit, and then his new film from Spike Lee, who's not one of my favorite directors, so that'll be an interesting discussion, I think. And then really excited to get into all the Denzel movies we have on the docket today. So yeah, in terms of like I'll talk more about Denzel, and I gave a little preview there of my experience with Denzel. But yeah, what about you? Like, when was he also one of the stars that crossed over to India when you were a kid? Has everyone had Denzel fever back then?
Not so much, to be very honest. And I was thinking about that. Like, of course, I knew of him, and we'll talk about a movie that I obviously saw when I was still in India, but
Hmm.
he'd not crossed over like, Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, the other kind of movie stars from, that generation, if you will. But then, of course, moving here, I ended up seeing a lot of his movies, and I feel like over the years, especially the last 10 years, not only have I tried to understand, his stardom and movie persona, if you will. And obviously, I missed the heyday, right? Like when he was this handsome, dashing guy who just could do anything, right? So I missed that,
He
while it
still
was
he still
happening.
is. He
He
looks
still
great.
is,
He
yeah.
looks very good.
He looks very
He's still
good.
got that swagger,
He looks very good. But I think what I was going to say was that I've kind of discovered in myself that he actually might be one of my favorite actors of all time.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that just goes to, what we talk a lot about on this podcast of like what is good performance, at least to me, and who are good actors. And there's this sort of small list of people who are movie stars, but can also transform into whatever character they are playing. And they uphold this level of respect and dignity, and they have long charting careers. They have, chosen interesting projects. They work with pretty much anyone and everyone who's out there. It's like a very small list of people, and I think Denzel is in there for sure, maybe even at the top. And I think what's been interesting, and this is not a hot take because this is now very much in the pop culture, like he's often ranked in the best actors, of the last century or this century or what have you. I think unlike a lot of other peers of his, Tom Hanks, Tom
Hmm.
Cruise, I guess even Brad Pitt, although they're younger, I
Yeah,
suppose.
Brad Pitt might be a little younger,
Might
but
be younger,
I
yeah.
put them in '90s, matinee idol sort of
Exactly,
A-list
yeah.
talent. They're in, yeah, I put them
Yeah.
together.
But I think what's interesting is that as all these guys have gotten older, Cruise has done Cruise,
Right.
you know? Hanks has had a very interesting career, but for a while there wasn't much happening, and I think he's come back out. But I think Denzel has maintained this really interesting career where, he has the equalizers and the big blockbusters, but he also has really interesting dramas, which are few and far in between right now anyway. So he's sort of a singular figure in that sense. I mean, let alone people of his, age group, but just in general, there's nobody out there who can, straddle this from critics to masses to everybody, and is constantly taking risks, directing, doing plays on
Hmm.
Broadway or what
Yeah, he
have
loves
you. Like
theater.
this
Yeah.
is, yeah, this is somebody who like is a through and through actor, through and through artist, professional. So I don't know, like just the way I'm a big Meryl Streep fan, I kind of put the two of them in that bucket now of,
Mm.
actors who are incredible, have amazing on-screen, off-screen lives, can transfer, go between different mediums. So yeah, he's kind of unparalleled.
No, no. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. And for me though, like I was very aware of him when I was growing up. I mean, he was in
Hmm.
that caliber of 90s movie stars. A lot of the films were not like kids movies, so it wasn't like I watched him when I was, a young boy. Or even like an early teen, because the movies that he was making just weren't typically the movies that I was gravitating towards.
Hmm.
But as I started watching more of his things, we'll talk about the one that kind of got me to really get into Denzel. Immediately, I would agree with you. Like, he is just such a good actor. And it's also, too, like, he has the fiat factor that, the camera loves you, that everyone says. And he just walks into a room on screen and immediately, like, he is the scene. Like, he takes, all the attention in, like, a good way. He can turn any kind of bad movie, even if it's
Yeah,
kind of bad. And he's made some bad movies, but his performances are always
he's
so
never
good.
bad.
He's elevates every movie that he's in, even if it's sort of like a little bit of a low tier film. I mean, those Equalizer films are really fun. That's his Taken. When we just covered Liam Neeson, that's his version of Taken, and there's three of them. And unlike Taken, which falls off pretty quickly, that trilogy, I think all three of the Equalizer films are really fun, and a lot of
Mm.
that is due to Denzel's performance in those movies. And I think it's just very impressive that his career has maintained at that level, like you said, the whole time. These the other stars have had ebbs and flows. Even as someone as big as Tom Cruise, there was a fallow period in there, 20 years ago in the, mid 2000s where he wasn't doing so great and his movies are kind of bad and he wasn't a box office draw. Denzel's always been there. And I think that is just because he's so easy to love actually, and like sort of you want to like this guy no matter what he does, even when he plays villains. There's something about him that you just there's a presence that he has that I think is just unparalleled. He just and super cool, and just like I love this, like the cadence of his voice and the way that he kind of moves his body around and his body language. He's always kind of finding the role. So like you kind of forget that he is such a talented actor sometimes, because you get so swept up in that aura of him. But you're right. I mean, I think he is just as like on that same plane as like a Meryl Streep. I mean, he's been nominated so many times for the Oscars for acting, and
Hmm.
all of them are very well deserved. Actually, most of the
Hmm.
films we're talking about today, I think, cover a lot of his Oscar nominations and wins, and all of them are incredibly deserved. And that's pretty rare, actually, when we do one of these episodes, to have someone that has been that sort of critically successful and award successful, but also like box office success. Like he's
Right.
had
It's very
giant
hard.
movies over like 30-year career. It's really
Yeah.
impressive. But I've always thought he was cool, and I always loved sitting in front of a Denzel movie again. Maybe the movie's not good, but he's gonna be good, and he will make it fun and entertaining too. Like he makes it. Yeah, there's something fun about his performances, even when he's playing again a bad guy or in a very serious film. I don't know. There's some little twinkle that he has that he brings to the roles that is very Hollywood, like Hollywood movie star is kind of the best way to put it. But I love Denzel.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, what is it about him? And I think the words that I kept thinking about were number one, just charisma. Maybe that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
that
has this
aura.
sort of
He's
like
got the
instant
riz.
draw,
Yeah, exactly.
that you can't take your eyes off of him. But at the same time, there's sort of an intelligence to him. Even when he's not playing, well, often he is playing people who are very articulate and
Hmm.
have either anger or a way to express themselves in a way that's very clear, even if the intentions are, murky. So there's a lot of presence with that. But then he also surprisingly can sort of be quiet and vanish. And as I've watched more and more of him, especially, preparing for this podcast, I was sort of surprised by like how amazing he is even in the quieter moments. Because
Oh
when I
yeah.
think of Denzel, I think of like big sort of oratory kind of speeches, and
King
speeches
Kong
that'll move
ain't
you.
got nothing on me.
Like
Like
that
that
one,
when he's yelling that
exactly.
out. Yeah. Oh, sorry, shit on me. I guess I get
Shit,
I'm
I mean,
using
yeah.
the trailer version.
Yeah, so that's what I think of, like some monologue which is delivered with like, complete commitment, total passion, what have you. But I think what surprised me is like how measured he is. And just like Meryl, right? Like these people are oft sometimes accused of being too prepared and too technical. But I like that, and especially when they're in a good movie where everything else is kind of working around them, you see how invested they are in the character. And yes, they bring themselves too, but that's what elevates it, right? Because I don't know. I'm biased because I'm mostly grown up watching Bollywood movies and Hollywood movies, and then I've expanded my, repertoire elsewhere. And there are amazing actors from France and other places who are very understated, like an Isabelle Huppert, who just,
Hmm.
just becomes, I don't know, the rug in the floor, she could do that.
Yeah.
But I like the Hollywood actor kind of mold where there is a little bit of them in every performance, but yet they also transform. And I think Denzel is exactly that. Like, there's never a false note. Like, you never question the character that he's playing, even in a movie like an Equalizer, that,
Hmm.
oh, would this person do this? I never question that because he commits and he grabs you, even if he's being quiet.
Yeah, he is, and most of the performances actually are very quiet, but he's like projecting something loud in
It's
his
all
body
inside.
language. And right, like we covered the Gladiator sequel last year, movie that was not great, though I thought the best part of it was his performance, and he plays this
Absolutely.
very understated, sort of Machiavellian character in the background,
He was
moving the
not
chess pieces
understated. He
around.
was
At,
pretty
at the
out
beginning,
there.
at the beginning of the movie, he's very quiet. Like he's not yelling or making big speeches or trying
No,
to be showy. And then obviously at the end, he definitely gets that. But like he could just be in a room, and the way that he would sit in his chair, watch the gladiator matches, you can tell like something is turning in his mind. So it's very quiet, but there's so much going on in his performance through a lot of his body language and his intonation, where he doesn't need to yell or make some, like you said, big speech where he's saying all this stuff about what his character's motivations are. You can just tell it in the way that he carries himself. And I think that
yeah,
is that like it factor, that presence factor where he can pull that off. And there's a lot of examples in the movies that we'll cover of this too, where, in learning a little bit more about them, over the years, and especially something like Training Day, like so much of that is what he brings. It's not even on the page. Like he'll
no,
do little things in his character that just sort of make the characters richer, and that's what he's bringing as opposed to the director or the writer. And I always love when actors are doing that. They're like seeing something in the character and then bringing things in. I know that's the job of all the actors, but I think he does an exceptionally good job of that because
exceptionally
even
good
if the
job.
material is kind of weak, he'll figure out something to make it fun and interesting, and just by standing there.
Totally. And with so many different directors, right? Like
Hmm.
often some of these guys like Hanks or Cruise, they usually go back to the same people. And Denzel has done that too. It's a very long career, but the movies that we're going to cover today, I think all of them are with different directors pretty much, or a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll cover two that I think some of his two most like popular collaborations will be with Spike Lee. We're covering one of his films, and
Right.
Tony Scott, and we're covering one of theirs. But other than those two, yeah, he is sort of yeah, kind of going with a lot of different directors and writers. He's not like
It's pretty
always been in,
amazing.
which is yeah, and just excellent across the board.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, speaking of which, what did you think of the new Spike Lee joint?
Yes, we have a new joint that we are talking about. This is highest to lowest, as in the number two. This movie, directed by Spike Lee, actually a remake of an Akira Kurosawa film, High and Low. The IMDb plot summary: when a Titan music mogul is targeted with a ransom plot, he is jammed up in a life or death moral dilemma. So, starring Denzel Washington, Jeffrey Wright, and the rapper ASAP Rocky. And yeah, this movie just dropped on Apple TV, I think about a week ago. It was in theaters for a very short period of time. I missed it in theaters. I just had a very busy
Same.
August. So wasn't able to see it in theaters, but I did stream it. And yeah, so a couple caveats before getting into my thoughts of the film. Firstly, I'm not a big Spike Lee fan. It's not like I dislike his movies, but it's rare for me to like fall in love with his films. Even his very good ones, I only think for me are kind of like okay. He is a little bit too kind of showy with his style in a way that just doesn't kind of work for me. Operatic and melodramatic in a way that sometimes that does work, but didn't in this case. And then in the lead up to this film, I did watch the original Kurosawa film, which I had actually
Oh, I
never
was
seen,
curious.
and I
I'd never
used
seen it.
and I used this as an excuse to be like, okay, I gotta check High and Low off my list. I've never seen that. So, and I'd seen it maybe 2 days before I watched this one. So that is sort of something that I'll discuss a little bit when I get into the review. So yeah, overall on the movie, I thought it was like typically Spike Lee movies for me, kind of okay to not that great. I thought that the first half of the film, which is a lot about this ransom plot that was referenced in the synopsis, where he's a music mogul. someone's trying to kidnap his son, accidentally kidnaps the son of his friend and chauffeur instead. And then it's like, oh, what do I do? Do I pay the ransom or use it for this corporate takeover that I'm doing? And it's sort of all in these rooms in this high-rise apartment, which is very similar to the Kurosawa film as well, which takes place in a lot of closed rooms in the first half. And then it sort of opens up in the second half. And the first half, I just felt like, again, maybe because I just watched highest and lowest. I'm like, well, what's highest? Yeah, high and low. Sorry. I was like, what's kind of different here? Like, there's really nothing that they're doing that is that interesting or unique about this situation compared to the original film. And it wasn't really gripping or interesting to me. Once it gets out of the apartment in the second half of the movie, which is pretty different, especially in the involvement of Denzel Washington's character throughout the whole thing. In the original film, the main businessman isn't really in much of the second half. It becomes this police procedural more than
Mm.
it does sort of an action movie that this kind of becomes. I felt that at least the movie sort of came alive a little bit more. I was more
Mhm.
invested. Spike Lee, shoots New York very well. So there was some fun sequences on the train when he's doing the money drop that sort of kept me engaged. And the end felt a little bit rushed, and I kind of got what they sort of changed the message of the movie a little bit from what the original one was. A lot more about class politics, and this was, I think, at least I interpret it as fame and sort of what you will do to become famous and the different routes of that. But yeah, overall, thought it was okay to not that great. Like I don't think I'd see this again. But Denzel, like we were talking about, makes every scene at least interesting, and he was like great to watch throughout this whole movie, like playing this executive with this swagger that he's got. And I'm glad that he's in the whole movie, unlike High and Low, where that character sort of disappears in the second half, because I think that's what kept me invested. Just Denzel just being cool, and then there's a couple great scenes that we'll kind of talk about later. But yeah, that was sort of my overall thoughts. Classic, great Denzel performance that is fun and energetic and interesting. He's got the Riz, and stuff. But the movie just wasn't for me because of the Spike Lee elements. But what about you? What were your first impressions of the film and Denzel?
Yeah, I felt similarly about the movie that I'm not seeing the original, but I sort of knew what the plot is. And, you know, it's not even about is this plot new or fresh? It's always about the treatment, right? Like, how are you doing it? And there's something about the showiness aspect that you're talking about with the movie, and I guess Spike as well, which just felt like false to me, especially in the first half, and which then leads you to sort of disengage as well,
Hmm.
because I understand what they're trying to do, like this world of like high power, money, and music and what have you. Like everybody in this world is a little bit kind of on their own planet, if you will. And to communicate that, we have the cinematography, we have this really kind of over the top, opening to amazing Brooklyn, New York,
Hmm.
skyline with, music, oh, beautiful Chicago, or is it Chicago? Oklahoma, sorry,
Oklahoma,
Oklahoma.
yeah, which I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah,
But
when I think of New York, I
I,
think of Oklahoma. So, hey.
exactly. But I get what they're trying to do. Like everything is sort of meant to be pitched a little bit over the top with those elements, the performances, the decor, and then the constant score, background score throughout the entire movie. And for whatever reason, like these things are supposed to make you feel that, oh, you're in this world of hip hop and music and producers and money. Instead, it felt like a television movie to me.
Mm,
And I think a lot of it has to do with the score. But I think a lot of it just has to do with just the relationships of all these people. The only relationship in the entire movie that I felt was sort of real was between Denzel and Jeffrey Wright's character,
right, the two
where you
friends.
felt that, okay, these people go way back, they've seen some shit together, they've helped each other out, there's a lot of unsaid stuff between them. But all the other relationships between Denzel and the wife, Denzel and the kid, and what have you, like, and the office people, they all feel like caricatures. And I don't know how much do I blame the actors in this or just Spike and the direction, but it sort of feels like, hey, it will be cool. The band is back together, and the product is not great. It this sort of has that sort of energy to it. I do agree the second half does open up quite a bit, and the action stuff is really great, and it's fun to see kind of Denzel out and about. And of course, New York is shot beautifully. I like sort of the music that the central song that A$AP Rocky sings. Like I thought that was pretty fun.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Front to the back, whatever.
Right,
Even though
right,
I
right.
have no clue about any of his music. This is not my music. But
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
but it was really fun. Like I love the beat of that. And we'll get to the message of the movie and what it's trying to say later. But yeah, overall, I don't know. It just didn't come together for me. It just felt I was at times bored and at times just felt like this is pitched way too up and it's not landing. Um, and then speaking of Denzel, I don't blame him. He is very entertaining and energetic and what have you. But because the rest of the movie around him and the actors around him are not pitched and the relationships are not drawn out, this is the first time that I felt him to be kind of false as well.
Mm.
Like I didn't fully buy that he was this guy. As I was thinking about it later, some of these over the top scenes where he's like, Aretha, what would you do? Da da da, what would you do? And he's holding pictures of these people. I mean, I understand sort of intellectually that is pitched once again at an over the top level. This is a music mogul and blah blah blah, but it just didn't feel earned to me at all. That oh, someone like this would behave like that. Was it entertaining? Yes, I would totally watch him. And then the second thing I would say about Denzel is that I mean he looks great for his age,
Yeah, he does.
but he looks old for the character he's playing. And
Oh, you
it's not
think?
about the fake hairline and all that is fine. I think it's more about, I've said this in the podcast before, I always look at the lip area.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the lip area where like one lip, and Denzel has always had this and has only become progressively more pronounced, where one
Yeah,
lip hangs loose.
never noticed that, but I trust you. You're the expert on that.
And
So.
I was like, with a teenage son, this is not what you would be and what you would look like. And of course, they got a body double running through the, metro stations, subway stations, because that's not Denzel running behind A$AP Rocky for sure.
Oh, and the chase
So,
sequence. Yeah.
yeah, the chase scenes exactly. So, I don't know. I just sort of felt that it's the same thing of the Irishman, right? I mean, in that case, they were de-aged, but the body was just not at the same pace. Um, and it could be that this character is older and just has like a younger wife and what have you, but the way he's pitched in his demeanor, it's supposed to make you think that this is an energetic, you know, 50 something guy. And that just didn't land on me. So yeah, this is the first time I'm saying this about Denzel. Very entertaining, but kind of false.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought to me like I didn't really have a lot of criticisms of his like performance, and for what I sort of thought they were going for was this guy who was used to be really popular back like 25 years ago. They kept referencing like, oh, 2002, 2003, like the
Right,
sound that he created. And now he's kind of over the hill, like professionally, which is why he's trying to wrestle back control of his company to try to have sort of like a second wind in his career. Cause I think he
right,
was, his legacy was weighing on him, which sort of adds to the dilemma of do I use the money all my money to buy the business to say, like reinvent myself, or use the money to save the son of my friend, like that moral dilemma piece. So to me, like yeah, like and Denzel always just sort of looks like a cool dude. So I'm like, okay, I could see this guy being like the hot shit like 25 years ago, and now he thinks he's a little bit cooler than he is sort of what I was interpreting. Some of the
mm,
like he's sort of wearing things that are maybe a little too young for him, and
mm,
thinking that he's a little bit cooler than he actually is now. He's kind of
mm.
past his prime, is sort of how I was interpreting
Yeah,
that a little bit. But again, like, I think that a lot of the movie doesn't do a very good job of establishing that even really well
right.
enough. So, there's only, I guess, so much
What he
Denzel can
can do is,
do.
yeah, it's not his fault. And I
Hmm.
don't think so, yeah. Because we're just supposed to believe and accept that this person is who he is. And I'm not saying give me like a, prologue or like
Hmm.
exposition. No, it just has to be in the fabric of the movie.
Yeah.
And it isn't. But then the ideas of kind of legacy and, friendship,
Hmm.
money, power, fame, you know, new generation versus older generation. Like there's some really interesting ideas in the movie for sure. But I almost feel like there are too many things, On one hand, it's about just money and saving, controlling that. But then there's also this thing with Jeffrey Wright that he is his friend, and you can tell that Jeffrey Wright has helped Denzel's character in big ways in the
Over
past.
the yeah,
So,
exactly. Right, right.
it's almost like you kind of owe me, even though this is
Right.
like a big sum of money. But I also feel embarrassed that, I'm asking for this money. I think that dilemma that Denzel goes through, like that's pretty interesting. But then you also have the legacy, you also have the music, you also have I don't get this music that Rocky character is kind of promoting and such. So there's just too many layers, and I just feel like we could have gotten rid of one layer, and this would have maybe been a little bit tighter.
Yeah, that's I think I agree with that too. The story, at least in the short story, which actually I'd forgotten that I had read this. Like when I watched High and
Yeah.
Low, I'm like, oh, I've read this King's Ransom story when I was in like junior high. Like it was all sort of coming
Mm.
back and it was like, oh, this I remember like the short story, but in the short story and in the film too, like the second act when it turns into police procedural and it kind of like they wind the world and it is a lot more about class politics and rich versus poor and all the things that the Japanese were going through during the 50s, but it like builds on one another. So like the moral dilemma in the beginning kind of builds into the larger messages that the movie
Mm.
is dealing with in the Kurosawa film. And this one, I felt that the moral dilemma that they had in the beginning of the film didn't really to me feel connected to what I was sort of interpreting as the end of the movie, which was you have Aesop's Rocky character who is trying to use what any means necessary to become famous. He has talent. He's a good, he's a good performer, but because he can't get his music to Denzel, he went the kidnapping route and all these horrible things to try to get basically Denzel's attention so he can then become famous. And then compared to this female singer who is basically just also very talented, but is sort of going the more traditional route of just like persistence and not trying to shortcut through illegal means of trying to get in front of Denzel Washington. And in the end, she is the one with the, who gets the record deal basically and looks like is going to become famous because she chose like the higher path. That was sort of at least what I was thinking, like, okay, well, maybe this is what the movie's got to play with at the end, but what does that really have to do with the beginning? I don't know. Like that was the disconnect a little bit for me, but
Yeah, I think you're
it,
right. It doesn't really fully connect because that part of, are you worthy
hmm
of taking the stage? And also kind of, an older successful man looking at a younger guy saying that, oh, we did it the hard way, we did it the right way. Who are you to come? Not to mention the guy is literally young felon, goes by young felon, is a felon, like he's
right.
done bad stuff and is super entitled and all of that. So there's some like interesting like generation
hmm
kind of clash, which is great, but it sort of doesn't add up to whatever was happening before.
Right.
It could if it was just threaded in a more elegant fashion, which it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's just, blame is put on Spike, his screenwriter, I think more than anyone else. And again, I tend to not connect well with his movies for all these reasons that we were kind of talking about in terms of the characters sometimes not feeling more like caricatures and the music was just like
That's
I will
my
say it was way overly dramatic, but the second half, when they kept that going during the action scenes, it sort of started working for me towards the
yeah,
end.
I
The
agree.
beginning, it was honestly like ridiculous.
It was television movie,
Yeah, a
like
hundred
from the
percent.
90s. Yeah, no.
It was so weird. And, I just have to mention this as a, someone who grew up in Boston. The New York stuff just irritates me. And he has to always throw in anti-Boston hatred in this too, with one of the characters literally like screaming at the audience, like looking directly into the camera saying like the Red Sox suck and they had the crap on the Celtics.
Uh,
And I'm kind of like, okay, dude, I get it. You're from New York. Like his films always seemed too New York for me, if that even really makes any sense, in a way that has always kind of irritated me since the beginning of Spike Lee's career. But this, I'm like, okay, dude, I get it. You like the Yankees and you hate the Red Sox and you hate the Celtics. Like, I don't need to be inundated with this. So I was a little bit triggered. So I have to admit that did affect my enjoyment of the film a little bit. But that's just my own personal bias. I just want to call that out there. Any other massholes listening, just trigger warning on this movie that they crap on our sports teams.
yeah, I mean, I didn't, now that you say it, I do remember that line, but I do remember like showing the Knicks sign and what have you, as they're entering the subway and and stuff that has nothing to do with the movie, but is just Spike's kind of authorship
Right.
which I'm sure, people who love that love it.
Yeah.
And, I'm always like this stuff is like taking me out of the movie,
Yeah.
and at times it's effective. Like I haven't watched all of Spike Lee, so I honestly
Mhm.
don't really have like a full formed opinion. But like, for example, Black Klansman, his last kind of big movie, like weaving together what was happening in the movie at the time with footage from other massacres and
Mhm.
racial injustices and what have you, like I thought that was very effective. But in this movie, where every time somebody's mentioned of any notoriety, we get like a full shot of that person in a picture, and this, like, it takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
If you do it so many times, it could be effective if done sparingly. So I don't know. I still had a good time, I will say
Me
that,
too.
Like
Yeah, me too.
I enjoy it. I was bored at times, but I mostly had a good time watching it. So yeah,
Okay, so sounds like a pretty mixed review from the two of us.
mixed to
So
negative.
yeah, mixed and negative. I think that
Highest
is
to
sort of my
lowest, mixed to negative.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, the more two lowest. I would put it on the two lowest versus the two highest side of the coin. So now that we've covered his most recent film, we're gonna get into the meat of our episode, which is what we do every episode where we talk about our top threes. This is going to be three different films we're each bringing to the table that are Denzel Washington films. So the first one's going to be Our First Love, and this is the movie that first made us like fall in love with Denzel as an actor and be like, whoa, this guy rocks. Then The Masterpiece, the movie that really resonates with us the most that Denzel has done. And then finally, The Wild Card. This is just another movie that's important to us. Maybe Denzel did a big swing that was different from what he normally does, that worked or didn't work, or maybe just a movie that Denzel did that doesn't really get talked about enough, and we want to kind of bring it to the table. So why don't we start with you, Karan, and your first
Mhm.
love of Mr. Denzel Washington? Which movie are we covering?
Okay, so my first love is Remember the Titans from 2000, directed by, I've never heard of this director's name, Boaz Yakin, starring Denzel Washington, Will Patton, Wood Harris, and a whole bunch of other people, which I had no memory of were in this movie,
A lot of
such
up and
as
comers.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
Uh, Quick logline. In 1971, Virginia high school football was everything to the people of Alexandria. But when the school board was forced to integrate an all black school with an all white one, the foundation of football's tradition was put to the test. So I remember going to the cinemas with my undergrad buddies to watch this movie in India. No sort of prior information on who Denzel Washington is,
hmm
really no connection, knowledge, or interest in the sport itself. But just because, 20, 25 folks are loading up in a bus to go to the city to watch the movie, sure, why not?
yeah.
And I don't remember like a whole lot of details, or I didn't, but something about Denzel's speeches in the movie made like an instant mark on me. And I remember that feeling of just feeling inspired, and also, that feeling of like, quit fussing around and worrying about shit that doesn't matter. Get in line and get things happening. That's the feeling I remember from this movie. And since then, I guess number two, what I remembered was Sunshine, because I was like, oh, what is this character?
Oh, I was
What's he
like
up to?
Sunshine. There. Okay, right. The character
Yeah,
Sunshine. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, oh, what is this character?
Yeah.
What bird are you? So those were the two things that I remembered from this movie. And then I had not watched this movie ever since, until a week ago.
So you
And
didn't remember the Titans though.
I did, though. I
Okay.
remembered one Titan or two Titans.
Okay. So there were Titans were remembered. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Um, but yeah, rewatching it, we'll talk about the movie separately, but I think Denzel is incredible in this movie. I mean, this is what I associate with the Denzel Washington classic Hollywood picture performance, where full commitment to the character, a person who's confident, will fight the fight, will get everybody along with him, incredible speeches, but he never plays a person, even though who's on the right, who's squeaky clean. He always has character, just like real people,
hmm
who have some flaws or something that they're battling over. And even though this movie doesn't go into too much of that, but you see that, this guy, is fighting the fight, standing up and doing a really hard job of kind of, merging these two polar opposite groups together. But there's also an obsessive quality. It's often the thing that drives you and makes you great is also the thing that can bring you down, right? So, and you see that in this person. And yes, it's a movie star performance, but at the same time, you totally buy that this person is in that time. And it's in the body language, it's in the hairdo, and it's in the way he carries himself. And then the last thing I would say is that, I mean, it's a Hollywood picture, right? Made by Disney. It's a sports movie. That's the point. But it
Right.
is dealing with some pretty, harrowing topics of racism and that time and racial tension. I was kind of impressed, A, by the movie, but also by his performance, that often these themes are laid down so thickly, in a movie and in the audience. And I just felt like in this movie, especially in Denzel's performance, it felt pretty real to me. If you were living through that time, it's not like this is the only thing you would talk about. You would still have a life. You would still laugh. You would still, hold your kids and or get inspired by something or feel joy if people who are so-called from the other side are mixing because you're thinking about the bigger picture.
Right.
So I thought that the movie, but also Denzel particularly, like really upheld that. Like it felt like this person was living in that time. Yes, there's all this stress. It's all inside. There's also anger that's inside, but that's not the driving force. The driving force is how do we get better as people, and also how do we win? Like he see, and that's the job of a great coach. And so I still find it very impressive and just inspiring, just watching him. And then we'll talk more about the movie. But what's your connection or relationship with the Titans?
So I had seen this movie when it came out, also in college, when it was first released. I haven't seen it since then. I don't think, maybe one other time.
Mm,
But in terms of the Denzel piece, I think this is definitely like a perfect. If this is like your first Denzel movie and introduction to him, I think this is the perfect like encapsulation of a Denzel Washington performance. Like he is someone who does play people with very strong like moral convictions and a moral
hmm.
code that he always wants to do what's right. If it's following the rules, great. If it's not, then he will still like do what's right. Now, maybe the audience might not think that's right, but the character, usually it
Right,
is the right side. He very rarely
right.
plays villains, and we'll get into one of those movies later, but he is this person that you want to follow. You want to see, oh, this person is someone I want to aspire to be like. And that's why he makes a perfect coach as a coach character, because that's what coaches do, right? They inspire the best in their team. Sometimes it can be hard on them, but they know it's always for the best intentions. And you have, just he's there just to do his job. Like there's not any greater cause, even though, like you said, there are a lot of it's social issues movie, right? It is a social justice movie, but he is not, and his character isn't. Obviously, this is in the screenplay too, beating you over the head with that message. He's just there to do his job. And if that also means, which is win the team to win and help the teams integrate, if it also comes with healing racial wounds, great, but that's not what he is there to do. And he is, even though maybe in the back of his mind he's also trying to do these things, but
Hmm.
that's never kind of coming right into the forefront, which I think is a great testament to how they told the story, but also to his performance. He's not being preachy at all in this.
No,
He's being a coach who's also just doing this other thing. And I think this is another great example too of like, a classic coach performance could be yelling and screaming and being like, "You guys gotta go!" Like, come on, like a drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. But he is incredibly quiet. But you listen to him when he talks. There's this great scene when he's there, like scolding one of the kids. He's like, "Is this whose team is this? Is this like your team or your dad's team?" And it's like, and good coaches can do that too. Like they're not yelling at teachers or mentors or whatever. Whereas you can tell, like, oh my God, this is like so serious. I'm getting yelled at and being in trouble, but no one's yelling at me. And that's almost worse when that happens. And he's so good at doing that. It's not a loud performance vocally, but it's a very loud performance in terms of that charisma and that
it
presence. And
hits
that's
you.
that's why he's a great coach actor. And I
Yeah.
do think as we move into the film a little bit, the film I think is fine, and it's a very kind of hallmarky at times, but he elevates this to a movie that is very easily watchable if it's running on TV. I know some people really love this movie. Like this movie has a lot of huge defenders of like, oh, it's so amazing, and I'm definitely not in that camp. but it's also not a bad film, and it's a very enjoyable watch, and a lot of that has to do with Denzel. So yeah, maybe to transition more into the film. Yeah, how did you think of the film? It sounds like you didn't really resonate with you much at the time, other than the Denzel piece of it. But yeah, what did you think now watching it in 25?
I mean, I just didn't remember much, to be honest, from the first. I'm pretty sure I had a good time, but I didn't remember much from that time.
Ironic.
But
Remember the it's in the title, man. You got to remember them Titans, other than just the two Titans. But anyway, yeah, I'll use that joke again, maybe. But
three times a charm.
I know, yeah.
Uh, no, I see the criticism, right? That this is sort of paint by the numbers movie, and we have so many of these. I will say that just watching it now just made me feel kind of nostalgic for this kind of movie because they don't make these movies like this, and if they try to make them, they're bad. They're like
Hmm.
Netflix movies, that
Right.
just have that sort of glossy sort of sheen. Everything looks fake, and the performance are obviously bad, but like the storytelling is also not good. So I don't know. Just thinking about that, this movie kind of rose up in my estimation even more because it's not easy to tell a story like this, which has all these deep themes, but yet has a plot. Yet it's a sports movie. It has all these different people and relationships, and you end up caring for all the people. Like I teared up when the captain guy is like in the
In the
hospital
automobile
and his
accident, yeah.
best friend who's black who comes to see him, and not much is said between them, but just like you've seen these people being on opposite ends and then coming together, finding common ground, and they've developed this kind of brotherhood and friendship without any big speeches or
Hmm.
monologues or slow-mo walking. You just see people becoming friends, which we don't get that in movies very often. And
Right.
they did that in a movie which has 10 other themes, and yet they gave it the love and respect that it deserves. And I thought that was so moving and so well done. So I think it's those sort of things, it's not about the story or the plot. I think it's just the characters that the movie makes you care about. And it's not just Denzel, even Hayden Panettiere, the little girl who is this precocious child. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've seen Hayden Panettiere grown up. I'm like, you were exactly the way you were, or the way you are, like when you're a little kid. Like it's a very annoying, but like very committed, endearing performance. And so it's those elements that really come together. And then I think production design and the stuff that you expect from like a period movie, I think is pretty well done. Like the movies transports you to a different time without making it super heavy. There's no like weird sepia colors to highlight that, oh,
Right.
this is a 70s
Well, there
movie.
is something that really
There
annoyed me
is
about
some.
it. No, I don't mean that. It's just,
Oh,
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll talk
yeah,
about that
yeah.
when I get to
There's
it, though.
some stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I guess my only criticism from like a filmmaking standpoint, and this is from somebody who has no clue about this sport or really any sport, but just having watched other movies that are about baseball or sport, they don't do a good job in just sort of filming the scenes in the field, to my mind.
Hmm.
You
The
sort
sports
of
action. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's not the movie's strong suit. And in a sports movie, not that you have to be authentic or accurate, because like I said, I don't know what that is, but the movie's supposed to get you going, and I think there's something about the way those scenes are shot, and we get, a few of those games that it doesn't build that big high in you when something really amazing happens, or that edge of your seat sort of feeling that, oh, is he going to do it or not? Like it's there, but it's sort of
Hmm.
muted. I want that feeling to be big. Instead, what is big for me is the human relationships outside the field. And maybe that's the point of the movie. Maybe the sports is just the backdrop. It's really more about the people. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I do think this is two movies. It's a sports movie and then it's this social justice film. And
Hmm.
for me, the sports stuff works a lot better. And I think it's not necessarily because of the sports action, which I agree, there's not a lot of it, and they don't make the drama about like what the big play and are they going to get the ball across the line to
Right.
get
There's
the
none of that.
it's about the characters. And
Right.
you really care about these kids and their relationships, and that part of the and usually these sports movies, it is all about the player interaction, and then you have the sports action. But the player interaction stuff was great, and keeps you invested, and like you said, like you care about these guys. And then the social justice part of that part of this film, I mean, look, it is rated PG, so they had to do a lot to water down like the racism in this movie to make I think the PG rating, like in this movie the N-word is just Negro. They don't use what was probably actually used at the time when this stuff was going on. So, you can kind of think it's like a, baby's first experience with learning about racism. And I forgive the movie for that even, because again, it's PG and that's a decision, that they made. But, I do like the sports stuff because exactly of the characters. The thing I was going to bring up about the one piece that I didn't remember this being so annoying to me when I was watching this
Remember,
time is what? Aha! Yeah, okay, now you got me. I wasn't remembering the Titans this time, but this soundtrack is so irritating to me because it is like Forrest Gump, which is a movie that I despise. We've talked about before. And that soundtrack kind of broke the mold on like every 5 minutes we're just gonna hit you with like a 60s classic song. And the soundtrack sold a
um,
lot. It did historically
yeah,
break grounds in terms of movie soundtracks for boomers, basically. But this is just like every 5 minutes, another song from like 68 or 69. And then we get the R&B and then the rock music. And I'm like, okay, like, can you just like stop this? I know you're trying to set the tone or set the time, but it kind of got a little bit like too on the
it's too
head for
much.
me.
It's a little much. Yeah.
That part I did kind of rub up against. And the other thing that I thought was very odd, that almost kind of annoyed me was this is a movie that actually happened and these are real people and there is this real story about, the team and yeah, they changed a couple elements. And I love movies like this, especially sports movies based on real people. But at the end of the movie, I expect slash
Yeah, show me the
demand,
people.
show me the people. I want to
They
see
didn't. I
here's
said the exact same thing. I'm like,
yeah.
where are the people? I want to
Where are the
see him.
people? I want a photo of Denzel and then morph
Right,
into the real guy. I want a photo because these were real guys. Like the guy actually did
right.
get in the auto accident. Like it's all where were the people? They just showed footage of the actors sort of like messing around and like throwing the ball around. And
Very lame.
what is going on? Based on a true story, I think that should be a
I'm
requirement.
sure there's
You
a
must
reason.
show the people.
I'm sure there's a reason. Because why would you not do that?
You got to show the people.
Maybe
I
they
want to see.
couldn't get the rights, or maybe they didn't have their blessing, or who knows? I
It's
don't
just
know.
so
It
yeah.
was
It's
very odd. I want to see what
right.
Sunshine looked like in real life. Who looks like that in the 70s, by the way, I will say,
Oh
with
yeah.
hair like this and duck lips. And I was like,
Yeah.
no,
He,
that person does not exist in the 70s,
Yeah,
but
it
sure.
definitely looked more like he lives in 2000 and not
Yeah.
1971.
Especially at the funeral, I was like, "Oh, where did you come from? You have like totally different hair."
Yeah, now we were robbed of that by the filmmakers, and I just think that it's a very odd. They must have made maybe there was some reason, but that annoyed me. But overall, this is a perfectly serviceable movie with a great Denzel Washington performance, and I'm glad this was your first performance of Denzel. I think it's a just really helps you understand who he is as an actor and the kind of
Totally.
roles he can play. So you're lucky. You're lucky that you stumbled onto that bus, or not stumbled. You probably walked very perfectly, very excited to hang out with your buddies at the theater, and then you got
Yeah,
entertained by Denzel.
it was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, you said this earlier, so, but I'll repeat it, which is that I think this movie and this performance kind of sets that bar of like Denzel can do no wrong. And I know this in the general culture, especially with black people, like it's a thing like you revere someone like Denzel. Like Denzel can do no wrong. There are all these famous stories of like, older black women kind of yelling at Denzel when he does something wrong in the movie theater, like, no, Denzel, you should not be doing that. You should not be cheating on your wife or,
yeah.
so I think it comes from just his persona, but also a role like this. So I definitely have that. So when we talk about movies, when he's doing like questionable things, I still have that. Oh my gosh, Denzel, think about this.
I know. What are you doing, Denzel?
What are
How
you
could you
doing?
do this to me, to us?
Right. To
This isn't just
us.
you. You think about your fans. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, what is your first love?
So my first love is the Denzel Washington film Crimson Tide from 1995. This movie is directed by Tony Scott. IMDb plot summary: on a U.S. nuclear sub, a young first officer stages a mutiny to prevent his trigger-happy captain from launching his missiles before confirming his orders to do so. So again, Denzel in a great performance and up against Gene Hackman. Also another great performance from him. And much like actually Remember the Titans, there's a lot of other up and coming actors in early
Mm-hmm.
roles like Viggo Mortensen, a James Gandolfini, and Steve Zahns. There's sort of like a blink and you miss some of these up and coming guys. So it's kind of fun that they're also in this movie too, much like Remember the Titans. So For me, this wasn't probably the first Denzel movie I saw, or maybe it was. I don't exactly remember, but this was the one to me that, much like the role in Remember the Titans too, I think this really encapsulates what Denzel's movie star performance is. Like he is someone who is a very, like very good at his job. So he's like this really good, naval guy who, comes into this situation very calm, very staid, is always trying to do what's the right thing, even if sometimes it's not like what the orders are. I mean, that's really what this debate is about. Like, do you follow the order that you got, which is launch the nukes, or because you think that might be the wrong order? And there's another order that, came through and then sort of stopped halfway through. Well, let's just hold on a second and make sure we're doing the right thing as well. And he has a lot of great scenes of, these really intense moments where, again, is not yelling necessarily. He's keeping kind of quiet, keeping his cool. There's a great scene when he's getting an argument with Gene Hackman's character, who's like the commander who's fighting against, where Gene Hackman starts like hitting him actually in the face. And to try to like, move aside, I'm taking command. He's punching him, and Denzel's just like getting up and not doing anything, not responding, his cold face, not getting into this argument because he is someone who can stay very calm even in these really high stressful situations. And he just has this aura to him too. I mean, this movie, I mean, Tony Scott, I mentioned, was one of the directors they worked with a lot together. This is their first
Hmm.
collaboration. You can really see why, especially in the way that, and we'll get when we get more into the movie, just the way that Tony shoots things. He's very good at like capturing like emotion, mood, aura, all these different things, mise en scène to use the technical term. But Denzel fits into this so well. Like he looks incredible in this movie. He holds the screen incredible in this movie. He's up against Gene Hackman, who's this really famous actor who a lot more experience and was even like a bigger star than Denzel at this time. This is when Denzel's star was just starting to kind of really take off and holds his own with Gene Hackman. And so yeah, this immediately was like this guy's so cool. Like Denzel is so cool in this movie and doing the right thing, which I think is an important thing to his persona. So yeah, we'll talk a lot more about this movie. I think it's just a 90s classic. But yeah, what was had you seen this movie before, and what was your thoughts of Denzel in it when you did see it?
Yeah, I feel like I saw scenes of this movie when it came out, or I guess in the 90s, but because the name was always in my head, but then I watched it maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I've seen it
Hmm.
a couple of times since. And yeah, I mean, that's like the perfect Denzel. And I wish I was, watching him when he was coming up. Like what would that time have been to be living and watching movies in theaters when you're hit with something like that? Like he looks great, commands the screen totally, and you forget how young he is. He's sort of like fully formed,
Hmm.
Like I mean, there's even younger movies of his that I've seen, but I feel like he was always at this level of caliber. Of course, as years have gone by, the nuance of the craft and such has become finer and finer. But in terms of his signature attributes that we've talked about of charisma, presence, full commitment to the character, but also knowing what kind of movie I'm in and,
Right, right,
understanding who the players are. Like, yeah, he can choose the scenery, but he also, like all great actors, knows how to give and take, with ever who he is. And in this case, he's with Titans, in their own right.
right.
So, but yeah, there's something about, like you said, the Tony Scott chemistry in him that I mean, we get understated Denzel and the quiet thinking Denzel who still feels loud. The Tony Scott and Denzel collaboration, I think, is pitched at a higher volume.
Hmm.
And I love kind of that pairing that they have. And I don't know if Denzel would say this, but to me it feels like it's because of this pairing that Denzel is able to then kind of quieten the storm and take it more inward and still make you feel as if he's yelling at you. But in these movies, there's no yelling here really, but it's definitely a loud movie.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, Gene Hackman yells a lot
He
in
yells
this,
a
but
lot, but
right,
not
but
Denzel.
Denzel doesn't. I think you're right. It's like Tony Scott's style is very loud. That
Yep.
that is his signature thing. Like his color schemes, that there's incredible like Dutch angles of this movie. I love when the sort of the sub is turned and they're all kind of standing like this. And Hans Zimmer, one of the groundbreaking score
Yeah.
from him, sort of set the template of these 90s action scores. Because there's all this stuff going around that is so big and loud and bombastic in the Tony Scott way. Like Denzel, it's sort of like part of that, but it doesn't need to then add to it in a way. Like he fits into it, and Tony Scott just really knows how to deal with Denzel's energy. But yeah, like this movie, I think is just so good and so classically like 90s, just in the way that it's shot. Just they really care about, it's a little action movie that takes place on a submarine, which I love submarine pictures, so
Right.
that's it's great genre. But he does so much with it, like Tony Scott does, especially with the colors. I mean, there's like blues and greens and reds, and every scene is sort of lit differently, and I love how wet the movie is. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone in this movie, except for Gene Hackman, is just sweating bullets when this thing starts. Like everyone's moist. Even Denzel is just like sweating. I love that. You can feel that. You can feel the tension. You can feel the stakes because you can see it in the actors. And I think that is something, we mentioned this, sort of analogy of wet movies when we were talking about some romance films in the past. But I think it also applies to this, like tension. Like you don't
Right.
see in Hollywood blockbusters today, action movies, people sweat and look sort
Yeah.
of like raw and stuff. Like you never
Yeah.
see, Iron Man really sweating or, any of these action stars, but this movie has that, and just the amazing sequence in the beginning too, where they're coming into the submarine, it's pouring down rain, the Hans Zimmer score is like cranked up, Gene Hackman's standing up there, like looking all, everyone's looking great in their navy, dress, and he's giving this speech about, the Alabama, and we're gonna roll tide and all this stuff, and the soldiers are like, yeah, and they all just like run. It's just so awesome, and that is like Tony Scott and '90s movies. I just love it. It's like this is what the best of like blockbuster cinema was at that time. It's so great.
I couldn't agree more. It's just so fun. And I don't know, maybe we're just biased because we, grew up in that time.
Yeah.
And it's obviously over the top and maybe nuance and such is sort of out of the window. But I think the trick is that these movies are over the top, but at the same time, they also are deeply committed to the story that they're telling. I feel like we get movies that are over the top now that are either winking at
Hmm.
themselves or too self-aware. Plus, everything is CGI, so everything sort
Yeah.
of looks sort of fake anyway. And then the actors and the performances and such that they have, like they're not pitching at the level that you want them to. So as a result, like you don't care, about the stakes or the people. And I think what's amazing about the 90s era is that yes, they're pitched higher, but they have, A plus 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 actors who are bringing it,
Around
and they
them,
are
yes.
taking this movie
Hmm.
seriously, even though they shouldn't. These movies are often shot on film and they
Hmm.
have practical effects. They look amazing. They have all this, like you said, like, camera wizardry that's going on. So people took this shit seriously, and so did we. And we went in droves to the theaters, and hence they made the mark that they did. And this is sort of a great example of that. I don't think they can make this movie again now. They just
Yeah.
can't,
Right.
which
No,
is very
I
sad to me.
it is sad, and maybe it's because we're nostalgically looking back at the films of our past, and we're just at that age now. We're old. I don't know, but
Right.
I agree. Like all these things are not what is done in movies now of this type. Because yeah, this is basically like just a fun action movie. Yeah, there's stakes and things, but it's not trying to do anything grander than that. They're just trying to entertain you in this way. And everyone, again, including the score from Hans Zimmer, it's not just some throw off,
No,
guy
these
using
are
AI
all
to
like
create something.
creme de
Like,
la creme people.
oh my God, the best doing it. And there is something the movie's about too. I mean, I think the moral dilemma or the dilemma between do you follow the rules with no exception, or do you put your own humanity into it and say, you know what, actually, like there's something that isn't right here, and even though it's not necessarily protocol, like yes, Gene Hackman is right. They got the
Right.
command to fire the missiles, and just because then they never got an actual full verified command to retract it, so he is right technically. But I think Denzel is rising above the situation, not just being a dumb grunt following orders. And then as an officer, you're not supposed to do that. That's for the infantry, right? In the lower class,
Hmm.
you're supposed to put your own perspective into it a little bit. And he's doing that. And so I do think that is interesting that there is more to this than just the ticking clock elements of it. And in a way, the movie, which you can say is good or bad, at the end, there's a speech when they're up in front of the Naval Committee or whatever, like, you know what? You're both right and you're both wrong. Like the movie doesn't take really a stance on who is right, but that actually is kind of true. Like I can see where Gene Hackman is coming from. Like I'm not, someone who likes following rules, but look, if that he is right, like technically they did never get a rule that said or an order that was verified. But also, like I would probably do the same thing Denzel Washington. Like, look, like if we're doing nuclear Armageddon here, let's just make sure this is right.
Right.
Confirm that this is accurate. And apparently this is based on like a similar incident
Oh,
with a
wow.
Soviet submarine during the Cuban Missile Crisis where the same kind of thing happened where they got orders to fire on the United States. And then because of some U.S. ships that were above this Russian sub, they had to like pull down their radio communication, so they never got like confirmation. And there was a fight between these two officers on the boat, and luckily, morality prevailed, and they were like, let's just, if we're shooting on the U.S., like we got to make sure this is actually what we need to do. So they were sort of a little inspired by a true thing, which is cool to think about. So there's a little bit of a moral dilemma here that you can wrestle with as an audience member, but if you don't want to, just freaking entertaining ass movie.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's good that they don't get into that. I mean, I should say the only movie that has sort of lived up to that is Top Gun Maverick, with, all the new technology and everything
Yeah,
that we have, now. But I kind of like that, they don't take a side, and I think it's more fun that way.
yeah, yeah,
But it also, like to your point, it allows the audience to kind of think about a little bit as well. Like, okay, what would you do? What side are you on, as opposed to being told? And
right.
that's the thing. Like everything is sort of so, coded either explicitly or in an undercurrent way to kind of make you supposed to pick a side, or feel a certain way. And I don't know. I mean, there are movies where that you kind of want that, and it's kind of
The point of the
fun to
movie,
see,
yeah,
interesting to see, like, okay, what is the filmmaker's kind of point of view behind this? But I almost feel like at times it doesn't, I don't need it.
right, right. That this is not meant to. This is a thinking movie, but it's just meant to make you think. It's not meant to tell you something.
Right.
And I think some of the best action movies are that. Like they can do those two things at once. You're like, oh yeah, what would I do in this situation? Well, he is kind of right, and this person has a good point, but yet again, and like you're wrestling with that while you're also, on the edge of your seat because this ticking clock of at
Right.
some point they got to launch these missiles, or else, the Russian rebels will be able to fire on the United States, which isn't good either if that's actually happening. So it's got all those things going on, and I think, again, not to be the old man being like, they don't make them like this anymore. But nowadays, they would probably lose that element. It would just be either someone's clearly in the right, like it's about some asshole commander or some, a renegade, new guy, or they're just not even wrestling with the morality of it at all. And it's just like, well, let's just create fun action set pieces and just take all the thinking stuff out of it. Um,
Exactly. Or, to satisfy whatever rating, like it'll be the most representative cast of all time. But like none of it would feel actually real. None of it would feel like, oh, these people actually are together. That's the other thing. Like all these people, they feel like they're part of a unit, which is how it is,
right.
when you've been in submarines or you've been on the battlefield, like you are a unit. This is your only family, and you get that vibe from them, which is
Absolutely.
they don't do that anymore,
Yeah, and
actually.
just like they don't, I think just with the way this movie is cast too, with obviously these people weren't stars at the time, but they went on, a lot of these actors who play these minor characters but are very important because like you said, you have to believe that this is a crew, especially when they're starting
Right.
to do taking sides between Denzel and Gene Hackman. You want to care about these characters, understand their motivations on why, James Gandolfini's picking this one side over, these
Mm-hmm.
Viggo Mortensen who's kind of stuck in the middle, and these actors have to be good to pull those little things off. And I just feel like, yeah, they don't have maybe the bench that we did back then to put all these great character actors who are about to become bigger stars in these roles. But yeah, I think we're sounding very old in this review. So again, maybe this is just that time of our lives where it's the old. They don't make them like they used to, but they don't make them like this. And this movie's awesome. And this was what cemented in me my impression of Denzel. Just looks like cool, badass guy who's always knows what to do and is doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so I guess I can take on my next one.
yeah, do your masterpiece.
Okay. So this was a very hard one because, Denzel has given so many masterpiece worthy performances, and, spoiler alert for listeners that we do not have Malcolm X on our list.
Right. Oh yes, yeah.
Because I mean, I just have only seen it the one time, and I would love to go back and see it more times. But even in the one time that I've seen, I know what a I mean, the word masterpiece sort of feels small for that performance, but I just couldn't put it on here only because I've seen it the one time, and I need to, have like a deeper relationship with the movie, with the performance itself as well. So instead, what I chose is Philadelphia from 1993. directed by Jonathan Demme, starring, of course, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, Antonio Banderas. Quick logline: when a man with HIV is fired by his law firm because of his condition, he hires a homophobic small time lawyer as the only willing advocate for a wrong dismissal suit. So I watched this movie way after it came out, but I was very aware of the Oscar speech that Tom Hanks gave and that he won and what a moment that was. I
Hmm.
don't think I knew who Denzel Washington was at that time. So this is all, watching this movie and watching Denzel later in my life. And I chose it as my masterpiece because I think all the things that we've been saying about Denzel, this thing of charisma and presence, and you want to root for him, but there's always something else going on inside that he is trying to overcome. I think this is like a quintessential display of that, where you get, the oratory, super confident and even brash Denzel at times, but then you also get the Denzel who's slowly changing. And so much of that has to do just with how brilliant this movie is, which I'll talk about later. But I just think Tom Hanks is obviously incredible in the movie and he deserves and got all the love and praise for it. But I kind of think the MVP of the movie is actually Denzel because of the arc that his character is on. And we see him go through that, through within himself, his relationship with Tom Hanks's character and everybody around. So, and I wanted to pick something from his earlier era as well. Like he looks incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's somebody who is he is sort of the audience surrogate, at a time when this movie came out where the topic of AIDS and homosexuality and such was, I can't even imagine what would have been like. So you of course need America's sweetheart to play the main role, but you also need the other sweetheart who can do no wrong to be put in a position who is doing wrong, but also slowly understanding. And again, this could have been done in such a heavy-handed, hammy kind of way, but it's not because it's Denzel and it's Jonathan Demme. So yeah, that's why this is my masterpiece. Because now when I think of when I think of Denzel, I think of like fun performances and him giving a speech of some sort. But when I think a little bit deeply, this is the picture that comes in my head of him in the court or him meeting Tom Hanks for the first time and,
Yeah.
taking his hand back and all those gestures. And so it's brilliant, I think.
Yeah, I'd seen this movie not when it came out because I was too young to see when it came out, but I probably saw it maybe in college or late high school for the first time.
Mm.
And it is a movie that the more times I've seen it, it's one of the most saddest movies. Like incredibly sad film.
This
And
is
it's a
not a
great one.
Saturday night movie.
No, no, no. It's a great film. We'll talk more about the film, but with the Denzel piece of it, I agree with you in that like the Tom Hanks performance is so lauded and it is so good. Like he's the basically the main character, right? That he's the one you're
Yes.
empathizing with. That you forget how good Denzel is in this movie because you pay so close attention to Hanks and following his story. But Denzel is honestly, in a way, kind of the harder role. Maybe
Yeah.
even now, like it's very hard for me actually to watch this film because it probably at the time was so reflective of the homophobia in the culture back then and the treatment of people with AIDS. And we have moved not far enough, but far enough away from that where it feels kind of like old fashioned and grainy. Like people actually thought this and would think these things and do these things. That it's sometimes hard to kind of like stomach some of the stuff that Denzel does because it is so terribly homophobic. But it's because of that, it's a harder character, I think, to pull off. Now, Denzel carries with him that amazing charisma and all the things that you love about Denzel. So you think like this can't be a bad guy. It's Denzel Washington. Though I think you raise an interesting point too. Maybe at the time this was a surrogate audience character because maybe most people in the audience felt the same way that he did.
Yeah. And
Probably, like, and so it's like bringing you along and being like, maybe in the beginning when he's, berades that gay guy in the CVS, which is such a horrible scene to watch.
mm,
Maybe at that time it wasn't as horrible because, like, yeah, that I would have reacted the same way. Maybe the audience people were thinking, and then they're sort of brought along on this journey to realize, the
absolutely.
humanity and how bigoted that position actually is. So yeah, I think it is one of his greatest performances for sure. and right up there with the Hanks performance. I think the two of them, it's a two-hander, this film,
It's a
and they're
200.
both on the same level, and they're both needed to tell the story in the way that the story is told. It's very similar actually to the we covered Liam Neeson recently with the Schindler's List sort of arc of Oscar Schindler of sort of not really caring in the beginning and then gradually doing carrying him and saving all those Holocaust people who were going to go to the Holocaust. But it's this role is kind of harder because you don't really see Schindler in the beginning. He's more of he doesn't care about the plight of the Jews in that scenario. It's not like he's an anti-Semitic person who is like hating the Jews in the beginning of the movie. He just like, I don't care, I'm trying to make money. Whereas in this movie, Denzel is like actively hating any gay person, including Tom Hanks, and fearing AIDS and thinking that it's something that if he like looks at someone, you'll get AIDS. So it's a harder performance actually in a character to land. And in a way too, and especially on this rewatch, they don't really fully absolve, I think, Denzel of his homophobia per se. Like you don't really get the
No,
sense that he's now not homophobic. He just cares about this one person and loves Tom Hanks, or maybe not love is a strong word, but really cares about Tom Hanks and wants to save him and do him right and is very sad about his plight. But you don't really get the sense that like the next time someone misinterprets him as being gay at the CVS, he might not he might have the same reaction, which is a little interesting. I don't know if that was the point or the movie didn't want to go that far with it because it wasn't really that character's story as much as it was the Tom Hanks story. But I don't know. That was interesting on this rewatch. I'm like, oh, we don't really know whether he
yeah.
has changed that much beyond his empathy towards Tom Hanks and the plight of him, which interesting.
And I love that because, these things are, first of all, people don't change. People change in a big way in the movies, but
Mm,
in real life, it's always like slow change, if at all. So I think it feels very earned and honest to me that, okay,
hmm
I care about you now. And then from here, there'll be, a deeper journey, to go on. But I think what is also great about his performance is that, and that's what, I don't know, I'm no professor on this, but like hate is one thing that some of it is maybe what you actually feel, but a lot of it is also just projection of what is being thrown at you
hmm
because that's the world you live in. And I think there's something in Denzel's performance that is just so nuanced about that, where because he's not a bad guy.
Right,
And
right,
like we
right.
said,
Well,
like
beyond the
he
bigotry,
has
yeah.
all the charisma and all of that because it's Denzel. So it's hate, but it's also projection, but it's also discomfort, also confusion.
hmm
And a lot of hate actually comes from that as well, right? This is not understanding. And then you're in a culture where all this is happening. So of course you got to browbeat and, heighten it up. Otherwise, people are going to, say something, or that's what you think. It's all fear-based thinking, right? So I think there's in his performance, even when he's being very homophobic and bad and rude, there's like a fear in his eyes
hmm
I don't know what else. So I don't fully understand this, but I also don't like it. It's so good. And that to me explains why it's not a full 180. It's going to take time,
hmm If at all, to your
if at
point.
all.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Which
Yeah.
is how things are. But
Yeah.
it starts with understanding and empathy towards usually like, yeah, one person, that
Exactly.
that is either gay or has AIDS, and then it starts to change your perspective. Or, anything, right? It could be any type of bigotry, not necessarily just
Hmm.
homophobia. But
Hmm.
yeah, I
Hmm.
think that is the genius of this movie in a way that it's not it is at the same time sort of transition, I guess, into the film a little
Yeah.
bit. I think this movie is at the same time, I think, very like melodramatic, and it can be maybe cheesy, but that's kind of the point, and it works. Like it's like watching, It's a Wonderful Life or something. Like, yeah, it's cheesy, but that's why you like it, and that's what the movie needs to be to tell the story that it's telling. And I do think the more, every time I see this film, which isn't a lot again, because it's like so sad. It's one of like the saddest movies you'll ever see, but it just gets better in my mind, and just how masterful Jonathan Demme created this film. Not only the performances, but just the way that the camera, again, as the audience is looking at, especially Tom Hanks in the beginning when he is ill, and you feel like the camera's revolted by him.
Right.
And that is how people felt back then when they didn't know kind of what, what AIDS was and how it actually was transmitted. There was all this fear. And it's like you as the audience is are feeling what these, uninformed and bigoted people are feeling. You start feeling that way because that's the cameras forcing you to look at Tom Hanks as this other weird thing that you don't want to get next to and what's going to happen. And I think that is just it's hard to sit with that because like I don't look at people like that myself. I know a lot of people that are HIV positive, or not a lot, but several people that are HIV positive, and it's like not something that comes up often, or I don't think of them like that. It doesn't define who they are, but this movie kind of forces you into that position where you feel what that is like to be those people, and then also too the reverse of it. Of I think you really get a sense of like how Tom Hanks feels people staring at him. I
Hmm.
love those scenes of like when they zoom in, the Jonathan Demme classic, like really extreme close up where
Hmm.
you're sort of almost looking directly at the camera and you're feeling how Tom Hanks is feeling, like just yeah, like an other. He's being othered, right? Even
Right.
by the camera. So it's just it's a great film.
No, it's pretty brilliant. And you can sort of think of this as a 90s like courtroom drama, and there's so many of those that are like entertaining and fun, and even if they're dealing with like hard subject matter, but they're still sort of entertaining. And this movie, as sad as it is, once you start watching it, at least for me, I can't stop watching it because
Yep,
it's
exactly.
very like it's not like a dull or like a super serious boring movie, because it's packaged in this like amazing story structure of, okay, there's this person who's very capable, and it's about the court case actually. And I think that's so genius about the movie and the script, that they didn't make some like big tell all on the AIDS crisis or one movie trying to capture it all. Instead, they just took one person's story and the people in his life and made it so much about the work. It's about work, it's about equal treatment. And then
Right.
through that, you understand the human dynamics, what the disease is, the confusion that the person who has it is going through, and the confusion that everybody around him is, going through as well. Because we have to remember that at that time, no one really knew fully what this is.
Right.
So there's just a lot of confusion. But what I was going to say was that a movie of this kind doesn't need to be this good. Like,
Right.
you'll get good performances in a movie like this, even brilliant performances, but the filmmaking usually is like in service of the movie, and that's totally fine. But everything that you're saying with the score, the camera angles, like this is all demi, just like telling a visual story. And, speaking of which, we cannot not mention the whole operatic opera scene,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
which it shouldn't be in a movie like this, but it is. And it's that sort of stuff that Demi does and totally elevates the movie, because it's like a fever dream. You don't know if this is real or no, and you can't even make full sense of it, but it communicates everything about what Tom Hanks is going through. And I think it's the more I watch the movie, it's that scene that kind of captures the essence of the AIDS crisis.
Hmm.
Like, and like we were talking about highest to lowest, where the movie is doing things where it's, distracting you with the zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. This is a zoom out that just feels so earned because it's from the point of view of the character, but it zooms out into the larger sphere of feeling the confusion, the hate, all of it, and the dreams and the life that wouldn't live just in that one scene. And what better way to do that but by opera? And
Right.
you're right, it makes it melodramatic, but it needs to be.
Exactly. Right, right. I think that scene too, it's not only the Tom Hanks's feelings and everything, like you said, sort of it all done in one sequence, but it's how Denzel, like when you sort of see
Right.
him seeing that, that is really the moment I think in the movie where he truly understands and has the full empathy for like, oh yeah, this is like a guy who's dying. That
Yeah.
all those other things that I saw, the prejudice that I put in front of that, at the end of the day, this is a guy who's, yeah, who's gonna die.
Yeah.
And that's something we all deal with. We're all going to die. We all know people that, will die or are dying or have died. And I think that is the thing that connects us all. And Denzel, you can see him realizing that as the audience, I think, too, for the people that might have come in the movie and similar to the Denzel character of like, oh, AIDS, that's gross. And like they deserve it or what all these things that people might have
Right.
thought. That's the moment where the movie is trying to change the audience's mind
It
too.
all
It's
comes
just such a,
together.
it's a masterful performance from Tom Hanks, but just the filmmaking is so incredible
It's
in
so
that scene.
incredible. The color, the music, the angles. like the red, it's like seared in my brain of that color.
Hmm.
So yeah, this is a brilliant movie, and I know as over the time, I think it's reclaimed itself because for a while this was like kind of looked down upon and maybe even made fun of, or the gay community was not super embracing of it and this and that, but I think it's been reclaimed. I think this is a brilliant movie from head to toe.
Yeah, me too. It's just every time I watch it, I think I see different elements because again, in the beginning when I was saw it for the first time, it's just the Tom Hanks performance is so
Right.
towering. It sort of takes over everything else. But now that I see it as a picture, as a full picture beyond just this incredible performance from Tom Hanks, yeah, this movie is one of the greats. Again, now we're praising another 90s movie. We're gonna sound old again, but yeah, they really just uh, pulled this off. And then you sort of forget too that the importance of this movie at the time, that this was breaking ground in terms of talking about homophobia, the gay experience, AIDS, and now again, those things are not as rare to be talked about in media. But the movie doesn't need the historic value to make it good. It's just good on its own. That's why the movie has stood the test of time. It's not like some other films you might be like, well, this is the first one that told this story, so it's important historically, and it was brave, but like the movie isn't very good. Sometimes that'll happen, but this is actually it's both. It was a very important film to get made, but the movie is also just incredible. So that it'll
Totally.
stand the test of time without the historical, baggage
Totally.
attached to it.
Yeah, and I think they was like it's brilliant on their part to not be overcome by the weight and the pressure of that. Can you imagine making that movie at that time and
Oh my
this is
God.
all that's being talked about, and you suddenly have to uphold that the pressure that if we got it wrong, it's going to be so bad, but also this like desire to make this epic movie about this subject. Instead, it just feels small in a good
Hmm.
way. It
Hmm.
doesn't, it's not carrying that weight on its shoulders. And I think to your point, like that's what makes it really good. Because we get these movies all the time. I'm going to meet the moment and make a movie about this is happening now and
Right.
the wars and the troubles and this and that. It just it doesn't work if you think about things that way. You have to really zoom out, and only few people can do that. It's so hard.
No, absolutely. I think this movie, yeah, it is a movie about a person dying, really, at the
Right.
end of the day, and
And workplace.
and the workplace discrimination, and it doesn't try, even though it's making bigger statements. You could even, it's set in Philadelphia, and there's all these analogies you can draw to America and our justice
Hmm.
system and equality and all these sort of things. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's not where the narrative even ends. It ends with the videos.
Right. Yeah, that's it's just yeah.
Great film. Very, very
Yeah,
good film, but not a, yeah, like an early morning, wake up on a Sunday, grab a, it is, or a happy sort of Friday night kind of thing. But it's a great film that, gets better every time I see it, I think.
totally. Um, all right, what is your masterpiece?
Okay, my masterpiece is Training Day from 2001. This is a movie directed by Antoine Fuqua, written by David Ayer, who's now a filmmaker himself. It's one of his first screenplays. The IMDb plot summary: a rookie cop spends his first day as a Los Angeles narcotics officer with a rogue detective who isn't what he appears to be. This is starring Denzel Washington, obviously, and co-starring Ethan Hawke and Scott Glenn. So this is another, towering, famous Denzel performance. He won the Oscar for this. We quoted the King Kong line in the beginning of the film, beginning of the episode. But for me, the this sort of towers above a lot of the other Denzel performances in the way that, well, a couple things. Like first, it is the first time he has really just played an out and out villain, who is the bad guy of the film. And it's sort of a good tactic that the movie did this because for most of the movie you actually don't believe this is a bad guy. Like there must be something else going on. He can't be the bad guy. He can't be the bad guy, and then he is because he has this charisma that he's bringing to this role. And you need that. You need to be a guy who is, like we are saying, someone who is usually stands for what is morally right and is, breaking the rules sometimes, yes, like he does in this film, but it's always for a good cause. It's never for something bad. Like in Crimson Tide, he does a mutiny, right? But he's doing it because he's trying to make sure he's not accidentally starting Armageddon. But in this movie, he plays with his own performance in that sense, where the audience first you're not wondering, okay, is he bad or not? Then when you think he's bad, it's like, well, this can't be. And then at the end, you
Hmm.
end up being like, oh, okay. Like he sort of sells you on the bad version of Denzel, which is a guy who does have conviction. He believes in this worldview that he has this famous line in the film where you need to be a wolf to catch a wolf. Like he's basically a
Mm.
crooked cop, right? And he believes that society is everyone is neither bad nor good. Everyone is sort of like kind of you don't really know what they're about, so you have to operate in this environment, a kill or be killed sort of situation. And he ends up getting proven wrong in the film, but he does have this conviction, even though it's kind of a pessimistic one and one that ends up getting him killed actually at the end. But so yeah, so for me, I think that the first time that Denzel has really twisted his persona is definitely a big reason that I think this is his best performance. And then another aspect of it too is just what he's able to bring to this role that isn't on the page or in the character. Like a lot
Mm.
of little mannerisms, the way that he in this opening scene when they're going into like a cafe for like the first time to sit down, he just sort of like has these two guns like John Woo style, sort of strapped him. He sort of like caresses, touches guns a little bit, or he'll like kind of rub them together. He'll do these little things that are that again is not in the script and something that he is creating this character sort of out of his own invention. And it's elevating what this character could be. Even that King Kong line that I quoted in the beginning of the movie was an improv line that wasn't in the script. He'd actually spent a lot of time improving on set to add a lot more color to his character. Even that first scene I mentioned in the diner, there was only supposed to be a couple lines of dialogue sort of establishing what Ethan Hawke and his character were going to do that day. And he creates this whole other story about, oh, tell me about this time you were pulled over and what was your first kind of case. And all that stuff was Denzel coming in and doing that. And I think that makes this character more charismatic, more real and believable, as opposed to just a crooked cop who we've seen in a movie a billion different times. So we'll talk more about the movie in a bit, but yeah, to me this is like the quintessential in an odd way because this is him playing a bad guy, but it just shows how even when he's doing that, he can put in a performance that is incredible and that you're kind of rooting for in a weird way.
Hmm.
Throughout the entire movie until the end, you're like, oh, he died. Like crap. Yeah, before we get, more into training day and stuff, what was your first experience with this film and what did you think of Denzel in it?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously know this movie, but I had never seen it actually, right? And I'm very happy that I've finally gotten to see it because this is obviously a towering Denzel performance, and I just was like, oh, I sort of know what this would be as a movie, and I was like, I'll get to it, and I'm so happy that I watched it and we talk about the movie, but he's like lights out.
Yeah.
And actually, all the performances in the movie are incredible,
Yes.
particularly the two leads. But yeah, it, it's an undeniable performance, and that's why he gets the Oscar for this. It's almost like what more do you want me to do? Like all
Right,
of
right. Yeah.
his signature traits are there of like confidence and swagger and charisma. But once again, n- at the end of the movie, I was thinking about this, like what you were saying, and you almost don't believe it that something is wrong here, or you want to root for him because he's just so convincing. And also, he doesn't let you escape, right? Like you have to sort of say, yes, is the dinner good? Yes, yes, it is.
Right.
It's that sort of
Yeah.
thing. You can't escape it. So you're kind of mesmerized by that. But then towards the climax of the movie, the feeling that I was left with was that this is a haunted, sad man,
Hmm.
And as I was thinking about him and his face and his swagger, there's like a hollowness to it. It's put on, to kind of hide all these demons. And he's maybe even lost who he is because it's been so long that he's been operating the way he's been operating. And this worldview that you talked about with the wolves, like he's made that his kind of mantra. And
Hmm.
it's sort of blindly walking with that. So it's an incredible performance, which you can just take it on the face of it and be enjoy it and be bowled over by it. But like all Denzel performances, there's a lot of depth to that too. And then, like you were saying, all the physicalities, like the way he dresses, the way he
Yeah.
moves, the coats and the car, and how he gets in, gets out. It's like full commitment to this person. And then I guess the last thing I would say is that with regards to him, like I often think of Denzel as kind of the, scenery chewing kind of person, and then I'm always reminded in a positive way, oh no, he's like such a great, give and take kind of actor. And this is no exception. Like the dynamic between him and Ethan Hawke is so incredible.
Oh yeah.
And we'll talk more about Ethan Hawke as we talk about the movie too. But I think you need that dynamic for this movie to land the way it does. And you're totally right. I think they are bringing some A-level shit to this movie that is not on the page,
Hmm.
which is not to discredit the filmmakers because the movie is made actually really well. Like
Oh yeah, really
yeah,
well
it's
made.
like
Yeah.
edge of his seat, and it's not easy to capture these kind of lightning in a bottle performances, but also tell a compelling story, which is pretty grand and escape. It's a great LA movie.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's a lot of great filmic stuff going on, but they are definitely operating at a slightly higher level, and maybe that's the point. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the premise of the film, which is it's kind of like it sells itself, right? Like a rookie cop's first day, first 24 hours gets paired with a crooked cop, and then does he get corrupted or not?
Right,
Like that is a very, very simple story that I can tell why this movie then got greenlit based on that log line. But the actors, Denzel and Ethan Hawke, and I think Antoine Fuqua too, give him credit a lot as a director, but they just add so much more that there is so much more about it. Like you're right, like you wonder like what drove Alonzo, which is Denzel Washington's character, to be this. Like, was he originally like Ethan Hawke one day when he first started and he was like, oh, I'm gonna do what's right. And Ethan Hawke said,
right,
why are you gonna be a cop? Oh, because I want to like, catch the bad guys and the world is more kind of black and white. And then as Denzel sees how not that is, that there's a lot of bad stuff out there, he just gets corrupted and loses that optimism, becomes basically a nihilist. It's like, look, if the world is all like effed up, then I'm just gonna be effed up in it because the ends justify the means, like when Scott Gunn's character gets killed, he's like, oh, you just killed your friend. It's like, yeah, but like the guy was like selling drugs to kids. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, he's not really my friend. Like, I was just kind of using him. And at some point, yeah,
right.
justice was it illegal? Yeah, but like justice was served. So what matter? Why does this matter? Which is the attitude that crooked cops, I'm assuming, have, where it's not like they're. I mean, obviously they're bad because they're doing these things, but they think that they're operating in a world that is already bad. So then being bad in a world that's bad, oh, whatever. That's his whole philosophy. And you just think that, and like, where did he come from? What was he like? Because he talks a little bit about, oh, he had as a kid and maybe a wife, but you don't really know. And then, he has this girlfriend with his, with his child, and you just, you want to know. And Denzel gives you just enough, and a lot of it is not
Right.
on the in the dialogue. And yeah, I mean, I would love to see like a prequel to this, or like I don't know. I want the story to be expanded, but at the same time, I don't need it, But you like
No, it's enough.
you're asking the questions, like you want to know, and that's what makes a good movie, right? You want to know about the things that are
Yeah.
happening outside of this.
Yeah, totally. Um, and then yeah, Ethan Hawke, like it feels like such a like he's of course the audience surrogate,
Yeah,
but it's so much more than that. Like it's so hard, I think, to portray something like, oh, I just met you and I don't know what the F is happening. Like, who are you? Like that sort of experience. Because we're all feeling that as well. Like, are you for real? Like, what is your deal? Are you high? Like, what is going on over here? And
hmm,
he communicates that feeling in those first few hours of the movie just so brilliantly, like so freshly, like which is so hard. Like it's movies, right? Like you've probably done this like 20, 30 times, but it just feels so fresh. But then what's amazing in his character and his portrayal is that he's not a dumb guy.
right,
He's
right,
good. And it's not just, here are my beliefs and I'm going to hold by them, but otherwise I'm just not very good at my job. He's daring. He's like the stuff that he does, in that back alley with that girl who's
right.
been
Saving the girls be
Jack
assaulted.
saves
Yeah,
her and
hmm,
such. Like he really is like punching the guy. So he has stuff in him. And I think that's when you see the two of them really click as well. And so there's a lot of layers to Ethan's performance and his character, which I think is very important for Denzel to sort of see a little bit of him in him.
yes,
And I think it kind of tells that story that we were just talking about, that maybe he was this person. And I think that makes that dynamic a lot more interesting. And you don't know till the very end that, oh, is he going to cross over or no, Ethan's character,
right.
Because you are experiencing all this stuff firsthand and it's pretty tempting to go over there. But he's done enough in his performance verbally and non-verbally that you understand the choice that he makes at the end. It doesn't have to be said out loud anymore, you know.
Hmm.
So, but at the same time, it's very simple too. Like, you know, it's not a like it's a heady movie, but also it's not, which is
Right.
what I loved about the movie.
Right, like I said, like the premise is so straightforward that it's, probably been done many different times
Right.
like this, but because through, especially through the performances of Denzel and Ethan Hawke, there are more things going on in the film. And also too, like I think Antoine Fuqua, who shot this film, director of it, it's only his second film. I just think it just looks brilliant. It actually
Looks
reminded me,
so good.
especially watching this like so close to Crimson Tide for this episode. It was very like Tony Scott-ish in terms of the color palettes that he
Mm,
used, the textures of the streets glistening at night and things. I'm sure he was influenced a lot by Tony Scott's style. I think he just does an incredible job with it. And two, like movies like this, which present this, a character who is very nihilistic and thinks, the world is going to hell, so we might as well kind of do what we can. They can either sort of fall into the trap of just saying, yeah, the world sucks and this is what happens, and either maybe Ethan Hawke does get corrupted at the end, or he kind of gives up and says, "Screw this, the world sucks." But I like that this movie doesn't do that and has
mm,
it proves Denzel's worldview wrong. When he at the end he's like, okay, people of the streets, come out and like save me and like do a bad thing to get me out of this. And they're like, no, we're not. We're actually not. We've been living in fear of you
right.
and what you're doing. You're the bad element in here, and we're just
Right.
trying to do what we can to survive in your world. We're not part of this, and having them all just sort of like turn away, not save him, and just walk away. Even though you could say it's cheesy, but I think it's important to have that message of this film to have his worldview be proven wrong, and that's again the death of him.
Yeah.
And even as an audience, you're sort of thinking like, oh, okay, all these guys are kind of bad. All this bad stuff is happening. And then actually, the Ethan Hawke character gets saved in this movie only because he does the right thing,
Right. That's very
saving the
important.
girl, right? If he didn't
Right.
save the girl, when at the very end he's captured by the girl's uncle and he's
Right.
about to get murdered, and the only thing that saves him is the fact that he did something right in this
Right.
cruel, horrible world. Whereas Denzel, he's like, well, it's a horrible world, so I'm going to do all these other bad things. If
Right.
Ethan Hawke did a bad thing and just sort of let that girl get attacked, which Denzel wasn't planning on stopping,
No.
then he would have been killed at the end of the movie in that
Yeah.
bathtub, which is such a harrowing scene. I love that
Harrowing scene. Oh my
that whole when
gosh.
he's playing the poker with those guys, and you're like, he's alone, Denzel's gone, like what's gonna happen? And
What's
they're
gonna
playing around with the
happen?
guns. So tense and such a great performance by Ethan Hawke, who like is trying to act like he's not afraid because he knows that that's what he has to do to, so he doesn't get, attacked by these guys, but yet at the same time he's completely terrified. Is that's like his my favorite scene of his in the film. But yeah, but again, getting back to the point, the good person gets rewarded and the bad person with the bad worldview gets proved wrong. So I do like that this movie isn't nihilistic, which it very easily could have been, because a lot of these sort of bad cop movies end up sort of making that be the message. Like
Yeah.
everything sucks. So what a shitty world we live in. And I just don't personally like those types of films, you know?
Exactly. Because, there's the world is always gray. There's stuff, and I think this movie does that. Yes, it's a little bit cheesy,
It is, but it's a movie.
but yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
uh,
I'm glad you, yeah, finally saw the film and that it sort of met expectations, it sounds like, then, for what the
oh,
reputation of this film
definitely.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think this film sort of doesn't get a lot of the respect maybe it actually deserves to get. I think it's aged very well, and it's on, play on TNT and stuff a lot of like, oh, it's just sort
Mm,
of like a fun action movie. But no, I think there's a lot more going on in this, and it really is Denzel's sort of crowning.
it's the showcase.
It's a showcase of his powers. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've done our two masterpieces. So now we're gonna take our path down the wild side and do our wild cards. So what do you have for Denzel's wild card, Garan?
Yeah, so this also had many choices in my head, but I ended up choosing Flight from 2012, starring Denzel Washington, of course, Kelly Riley, Don Cheadle, John Goodman, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Quick logline. Troubling questions arise after airline pilot Whip Whitaker makes a miracle landing after a mid-air catastrophe. I remember watching this movie in the theater and just being completely blown away by the crash sequence and then everything else around it as well. But of course, what stuck in my head was the crash sequence. And but then what also stuck in my head was just Denzel's performance. And I'd not seen this movie since the first time I saw it, and then just but it was enough in my head that when I was thinking about a wild card,
Hmm.
I was like, this is the movie. Denzel just plays bad guys that are, bad on the surface and are cheeky, but they still have charisma and arrogance. We just talked about Alonzo.
Yep.
But this is, as to me, a big wild card because this is not only not a good guy, but this is the most vulnerable and weakest I've seen Denzel. And I think it's a really brave performance in my mind of what he puts up on screen, So that's why this is my wild card. You still see glimmers of, the Denzel we know and love. And it's so true with addicts as well, because this movie ultimately is a story of addiction, that
Hmm.
they have charisma in them. They
Right.
can really kind of get you in their wing, and especially when they're on the highest highs. And I think that's so critical to just the plot and the machinations of the movie, because that's the central dilemma, right? That, oh, this person who was, in totally not okay condition, but was also able to do this miracle of a landing. Would that have been possible if he were not? But then there are bigger questions that why was he not? And should he even be on this, right? So that's sort of the central premise. And I think Denzel just you see all of that. You see the confidence. He knows what he's doing, but you also see the pain and the hurt of like maybe he used to fly for Delta. Career was going somewhere else. That didn't work out. He's divorced,
Hmm.
no relationship with wife or kid. He's basically just living with booze. And then I think what is so painful and touching, but also because it's Denzel, you kind of root for him, is the brokenness and the not knowing of or not fully admitting that I need help, which is the other sort of addict thing, right? And you see that, and that's kind of what makes this performance stand out. In particular, for me, it's that first scene when he's in the hospital, concussed entirely, and you see a tear, and you even see him the next morning, he can barely walk. This is not something I associate Denzel Washington with at all. Just like broken completely. And there are many other scenes that follow in the movie. So I think this is a harrowing, brave performance, which could easily be very hammy, but it's just so nuanced. And that's why this is my wild card.
Yeah, I'd seen this film when it came out too, and actually hadn't watched it since theater, so similar to you. We'll talk about the film, which again, I think the crash sequence is, yeah, just incredible, especially in the theater. I still remember what that was
Gosh,
like to see it. But no,
terrifying.
Denzel, I think this is a very different type of performance from him. You're right, like he has the charisma, the riz, the aura, all that stuff, especially when he's high, on the cocaine and alcohol. Like he's a cool guy. He's got the flight outfit on, and he's like chatting up the
Yeah,
stewardesses, and he's impressing the passengers. And he is still actually very capable, even when he's all hopped up. He does that incredible miracle landing that saves most of the entire crew, even though he's drunk. And then you see his that vulnerable side that is so rare in Denzel, to see such a broken guy who is in so much need of help, can't help himself, which really you're the only one who really can save yourself in these situations. And just to see him consistently like fail like over and over again. Like so many times in this movie, he's like, I'm done. He throws all the booze away, and then
it's back in.
he's on the bender again, right? But he's performing. He's a high performing alcoholic or addict or whatever they say. Like he can still do all the things that he's doing, except obviously like have a relationship with his son and his wife, and those scenes are so difficult. I think the two scenes to me that really stand out for Denzel are his testimony at the end when he finally
Mm-hmm.
admits that
Mm-hmm.
I am, what they say in the AA meetings, right? Like I am an alcoholic, I have a problem, because he cannot basically blame the flight attendant for this or for the booze. He has to he cannot do that. That's the one bridge he cannot cross for some reason. And so his confession at the end, and then the scene with his son when he goes to the house and the son
Oh my
basically just
gosh.
attacks him and pushes him out. Just so amazing. Just the way that he carries himself of like he still looks great and he's Denzel, but he's kind of a little chunky and he sort of moves in a way where you can tell he has some kind of like problem, because he's probably drunk even then, coming to the
Yeah, he
house. And
is.
it's those two scenes to me are just like standout performances from Denzel. That yeah, this also is another one where one of his greatest performances, I think, actually is in
Yeah.
this film.
I mean, this could easily be a masterpiece too, but it's just pitched differently.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, the sun with the scene with the scene with the sun is just so incredible. Like you see all the emotions of anger and frustration and even love and even
Hmm.
loss that we have nothing in between, and also humiliation somewhere deep down that I am drunk and my son doesn't want me, but it's coming out almost physically,
Hmm.
like
Where he's
that
trying to grab
emotion,
him.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to grab him and like rail him and oh my gosh, like it's next level performance and just yeah, yeah. But the
Yeah.
movie, oh sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna talk to the movie, so why don't you jump in?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, the movie, I mean, like I said, when I first saw it, I loved it. Of course, the crash scene is so incredible that that's what you are left thinking, and of course Denzel's performance, and then the movie becomes like a proper drama, that you're watching this person, the relationships, the court and what have you, and you might think that where do you go after that incredible crash scene, right? That it's hard to go anywhere else. But on this rewatch, I just was like, this is kind of a perfect movie, pretty much. It obviously has this amazing lead up to the crash sequence, and it does such a great job in establishing who this person is, telling you a little bit, but not enough about Denzel, that the issues here, but you still are like, oh, well, how bad could it be? You're not even sure if he's divorced from his wife or is he like cheating or what have you. Like, things are off, but you don't know how bad it is. And then the movie becomes a sort of slow reveal, like a character study, essentially, of him, of addiction. But often movies about addiction, I feel like they are kind of, I don't know, almost like praying at that or making drama out of it. And even though this is it's an entertaining picture, like you're fully glued to it, but it's at the same time feels very real and feels very sympathetic. Like it really makes you understand, I think, at least I understood a lot about what that plight is. And it's not like you're pitying, but
Hmm.
you're with them and I was able to hear both him and Kelly Riley's character. Like these people, they need help and they're not, well, Denzel is sometimes bad too. And it's important to see the two, I guess, Kelly Riley and Denzel, who she's an addict too, but there's a good soul in her. She's seen love in her life from her mom and
Right.
she's
Right.
been
She has
through
support.
stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, she has some sort of a support structure and just like a nucleus core inside her that's not been fully destroyed, and you see that she gets out. And then the courtroom stuff becomes a whole other movie. But unlike Highest to Lowest, which you were talking about, I think all these connections and progressions between these three acts of the movie, they're connected very beautifully, actually. And I just give so much credit to Zemeckis. I mean, not only is the crash scene like an amazing feat of filmmaking that looks totally real,
Oh yeah.
not CGI. I mean, I don't think I was not breathing for the entire scene. And then
Hmm.
I had to pause and go, drink some water because, uh, but then he's able to connect that from that to the rest of the movie. This is Forrest Gump guy making movies about, you know, drugs and addiction and loss and what have you. Like, it's pretty incredible, I think. And that to an older person. Like, this movie feels so fresh and alive to me that it was made by, I'm sorry to say this, but like from a younger person, it has this agility to it. But so I don't know. I was blown away by this movie just watching the second time.
Yeah, the second time for me actually was a lot. The movie was a lot better than I remembered. So, this was Robert Zemeckis' first live action movie in like 10 years when this came out. So there was a
Mhm.
lot of hype going into it, and I was despite really disliking Forrest Gump, I'm a huge Robert Zemeckis fan. I mean, a lot of his movies are some of my favorite movies of all time. So I was kind of going in and expecting another Castaway or Back to the Future or something or Roger Rabbit, and I remember loving that first half. And that crash sequence is one of maybe the best airplane crash. I was thinking, like, when I was watching this, is this the best airplane crash in any movie?
Probably
The
is.
only other one I could think of was Castaway, and that was another Zemeckis film in terms of a harrowing plane crash. But then I remember not really connecting too much with the rest of the film. I think I was surprised it just turned into a very simple story about alcoholism because I don't think that was really in the trailers and the marketing very much. So I remember thinking the movie was okay, even though Denzel did a great job. But on the second rewatch, kind of knowing what it was and what it was going to be after you get through that plane crash, yeah, it just really rose a lot in my mind of just how they're able to, yeah, capture this story of addiction and a functioning alcoholic. And it was interesting watching this movie too. We just had watched for the Billy Wilder episode, our previous one, Lost Weekend, which is about alcoholism too. But that really did capture the sense that alcoholism was destroying this guy's ability to function. Like he couldn't write his stories. Everything was about booze all the time. And again, that movie's brilliant, and we talked about it then. But this movie isn't really about that. Like he is successful in his career. He can still fly the plane. It's his social life is getting ruined, obviously. His personal life is getting ruined. But the guy can drink and still and still like function. Like he's basically drunk through most of the movie. He'll like go
Yeah.
to a scene, he'll do a bunch of, a bunch of shots, drink some of the small alcohol bottles, and then okay, now he goes to visit his son or drives and goes to the store, talks to Kelly Riley's character, is in the hospital. So he's a functioning alcoholic. It's not destroying his life so immediately, even though obviously it is destroying his life slowly. And I think that's another reason why for him maybe it's so hard to quit himself of this addiction or at least recognize it because he can't see beyond himself. Right. In Lost Weekend, the guy couldn't write it. His own career is getting destroyed, him personally. Denzel, he's wrecking people around him, but because I think he's such a narcissist that can't really see the damage that his disease is causing to people around him until the very end, he's sort of fine with it. He says, "Oh, I'll quit," and dumps all the stuff, but then immediately he's right back and like pushes all these people away because he can't see the hurt that he's really causing. And it's not affecting him until this, at the end where he just can't lie for this girl. So that was
Yeah.
a different portrayal of alcoholism that is just another side of it of or addiction in general, right? It doesn't mean people are like scratching at themselves, climbing up the walls. No, they're functioning in society, but slowly like it is destroying their lives.
Yeah.
Which I thought was yeah. And the second watch, I'm like, this movie is actually like
It's
very
very
good,
deep, actually.
very very much so. And yeah, I think a lot of great, powerful performance from Denzel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's okay with it. I think maybe to a point, maybe in the early part of the movie, I suppose. But then as time goes on, like post crash, things are different for sure.
That's his
You
wake
know,
up, right? Of like I gotta do something, even though he keeps
do
failing at it
something.
every single
And
time.
not to mention, like going through an experience like that, even if you're totally high off out of your mind, like just the PTSD of that would be crazy, right?
Hmm.
Even if you were not drunk or not high. So there's also that at play here. But yeah, I think it gets to a point where he's unable to see if this is bad or good. That's kind of how I read that is I don't know if he's fine with it. It's just sort of like I don't even recognize that. I have no faculties available to recognize this. All I know is that something tells me I need to do the right thing and then I get rid of it and then something else triggers right after and then I'm back at it.
Hmm.
I mean, that's one scene when Kelly Riley's been living with him and she goes out and she comes back and he's like
On
totally
the floor,
on the
basically, like passed
floor and
out.
drunk
Yeah.
and it's just so sad just to see
Hmm.
that. And again, like Denzel, in that state, like it really lands on you in a very different kind of way. Like he can barely talk, he can
Hmm.
barely move. It's just so sad to me to see that. But yeah, this is a brilliant performance, brilliant movie, heavy, but actually very rewatchable.
Hmm. Like right, it's
It's tight.
entertaining. It's tight, entertaining. There's only a couple characters, but you really, you care about them. You're following Denzel. You want to kind of know what happens next, and he has a great arc there at the end where finally he does admit that he has
Yeah,
a problem. So yeah, I think this needs to be talked about more just in his filmography. I mean, I guess he was Oscar nominated, so
right.
it's not like it's a forgotten film. Or maybe then I would say with on the Zemeckis side of things, I think actually for me raising on his in his filmography ranking. For me,
Totally.
I didn't dismiss it at the time, but I think I was going in with different expectations. And that huge high of that first half an hour, I was expecting more on that type of energy. And now I can kind of see it for what this is. It's just a very powerful, more intimate drama that happens to also has an incredible action scene in the beginning, but it is really about this very intimate struggle of through addiction and this one character that yeah, it's sad too, which is kind of rare for Zemeckis in this way. But
Right.
I think yeah, I think he should get a lot of credit for this, and yeah, maybe
I
he'll make a
totally
movie soon
agree.
again.
And like a hard-hitting look at these hard themes, which is not something I expect from him at all.
Right.
And in fact, we were just saying they don't make him like this. I feel like this is very much a 90s like movie, but actually done at a much higher level,
Hmm.
thanks to the crash scene and a
Yeah.
performance which is so nuanced and every department is so nuanced. So it can happen, this movie is now what, 10 years old?
Yeah, 10, 15. I think it was like 2012 or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it feels like a movie from a different time, but elevated and updated.
Hmm. No,
Yeah.
agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I liked the flight that we took. It was a good flight.
All right. What is your wild card?
So the final film we'll be discussing is the Tragedy of Macbeth. This is a film that came out in 2021, so the more recent film that we're discussing. This is an adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth, directed and co-written by Joel Cohen, one half of the Coen brothers. This is post their breakup. The plot summary for people who don't know about Macbeth: a Scottish lord becomes convinced by a trio of witches that he will become the next king of Scotland, and his ambitious wife supports him in his plans for seizing power. So Denzel obviously is starring in this, along with Frances McDormand, who is Joel's wife and plays Lady Macbeth in this film. Also, some other actors too. Brendan Gleeson is in it for a bit, but really, this is I think a two-hander between the two of them, and especially Denzel. So, the reason why this is on my list for Denzel is a film that came out kind of during COVID, but I didn't remember seeing this in the theater at some point. So I did see this in the theater when it came
Oh.
out. I don't know how or when, but I think
Hmm.
maybe there's a brief period of time between the different waves, but I did see this in the theater. This is a setting, even though Denzel has done Shakespeare before, not only on the stage, but also in a Brenna film in the early 90s, Much Ado About Nothing, which I do like. It's not a world and persona or setting, I should say, that I associate with Denzel, especially with the Shakespearean dialogue too, is not something that I think of Denzel of period pieces, especially Shakespeare, and especially a film like this in the way that it's told. So I think this is a bit of a different zig for him in terms of something a little bit outside of his at least on-screen persona comfort
Hmm.
zone. But as really though too, I think he brings some interesting things though to the Macbeth character, which sometimes can be portrayed as a character who is um, sort of like weak, being, tempted by these witches, not really a sense of their own destiny. His wife, Lady Macbeth, plays a big part in trying to convince him to do these murders and kind of push him. So he's not a character sometimes in the adaptations with a lot of agency because of these other forces, fate controlling him and the wife. But in with Denzel's performance here on as Macbeth, you sense that the ambition does come from him. Like
Hmm.
he does want this crown. He does. Yes, obviously his wife is whispering in his ear a little bit, and but it is a lot of him. Like he's taking command of this mission to kill the king and then get rid of his rivals and all the things that happened to Macbeth to kind of drive him power hungry in this film. Seems like it really is coming a lot from him, which is sort of a different take on the character, which I think he brings a lot. His persona is lent to that as well. Because he is someone like we've talked about in so many of these films, he is a commanding presence. Even when he's drunk off his mind, he can still do an incredible landing. You trust this guy knows what he's doing. So I think his portrayal of Macbeth is interesting in that sense that and Joel obviously too, who co-wrote the film, is kind of dialing that angle up, which I do like that take on Macbeth, and I think also his handling of the Shakespearean dialogue is a lot more natural and less Shakespearean
Hmm.
in terms of the acting style of it, which I think does suit Denzel very well. He's not trying to do something that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Similar also to actually the Much Ado About Nothing. That's kind of Kenneth Branagh's style sometimes in his direction of Shakespeare. So what Joel Cohen is doing fits in a little bit too. But yeah, I think he's able to tackle this and bring his own Denzelness into this role, which easily can be too big for a lot of people to handle. I mean, Shakespeare is like a big thing that can eat up even some of the best actors. I've seen them struggle a lot of times, and actually, I think Frances McDormand struggles a lot in this film, who is, a double Oscar winner. I don't think she's able to up to the
Triple,
task. Oh, Trip. Oh my God. Whoa. Okay, you're right.
you
Yes.
know.
Oh man, that's crazy. But yeah, she struggles a lot in this, but I think he does a good job, and a lot to say actually about this film, which I do enjoy. But what was your relationship with the Tragedy of Macbeth and Macbeth, I guess in general? Do you like? It's my second favorite Shakespeare play after Hamlet. I really like Macbeth a lot, and have seen all the different film adaptations of it, including
Mm.
this one. So we'll talk more about the film when we talk about
Hmm.
that. But yeah, what are your takes on Denzel as the Scottish King?
Yeah, so I'd never seen this movie when it came out, so this was another blind spot for me. I'm glad that I finally saw it. And when it came out, like that was sort of the log line that he's very good, but the movie is sort of, and she's not good. That's sort of what I'd heard. And
Hmm.
that's sort of what I felt mostly. I'm no Shakespearean expert at all, and I've seen some interpretations, I think, but I will say this movie made me want to go and seek out and watch all the Macbeth movies because I think this is, of course, I know the story, but there's something
Hmm.
about the way the movie and the story is told that is just quite, it kind of envelops you in, but we'll talk about the movie separately. But with Denzel, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I didn't have so much of this in my head of like, oh, does he have control and agency or no? But that did come across. But at the same time, there's a sense of confusion as well. Like, he's not, Adam Driver from the Ridley Scott movie.
Last Duel.
Exactly.
Yes, yes. Right, right, right.
He's
Yeah.
not, it's not that sort of like, swinging energy, which
Hmm.
Denzel obviously is very capable of. But it's there, but there's also a sense of quiet and sense of confusion as well. So I thought that was amazing. Um, the Shakespearean dialogue, it's not something that I can handle too much of, but the way he delivered it was felt very normal and real, which I prefer.
Hmm.
So I think that worked really well. And then this is not just him, but everybody in the movie, but especially him. The way the movie is shot, the black and white, and just the texture and the color grading in the black and white, like he looks so good in the movie, and like everybody does, I think, in this movie. And there's something about, once again, mouth area. Like people's teeth are really highlighted in this
Uh-huh.
movie. I don't know, because of the black and white
Yeah,
contrast,
maybe. Yeah.
and but there's something about just his, and also just the aspect ratio, like his physicality and height is really felt. I really felt it in the movie, that his presence, like physically, even though there isn't that much, there are no battle. I guess there's some stuff, but there aren't like battle scenes and things like that. But I just felt his physical presence quite a bit. Um, so yeah, well, I want to hear your thoughts on the movie, but I thought
Yeah.
he was amazing. And you're right, like it's sort of, I haven't seen him on stage, but it's fun to see Denzel in kind of a Shakespearean period kind of drama, which also kind of feels like a play that's been mounted on screen.
Yes. Yeah, it's very so yeah, in terms of the film, it is very theatrically staged. It feels almost like it is made for the stage and then they filmed it.
Hmm.
The sets are it was first the movie is in 4:3, so it's not
Right.
a full screen. The it is in black and white, a lot of sort of close up cameras, but then they do kind of get back and do these really cool expressionistic, almost like Orson Welles or Bergman look to a
Hmm.
lot of it with the shadows.
Hmm.
And which is different than like my favorite, I think, on screen Macbeth was the Michael Fassbender version that came out about like 10 years ago. That
Oh,
was the exact
really?
opposite. It was like filmed in the Scottish Highlands and they open it up and there's battle scenes and that it's taking it completely away from the stage. I love that version. But this is going a different direction, so it does kind of feel like Denzel on stage. But I thought that, and also too, it's very edited down. The movie's only an hour and 45 minutes, so they
Right,
strip almost everything out except for the core basic plot elements, which is a very lean sort of way to tell Macbeth and kind of boil it down to the simple case of what happens with ambition and how that can get, if you're wanting something just to want it, you're gonna there's a tragedy, you're gonna die. You're not gonna it's not gonna either, you're not gonna feel like you actually, when you get it, it's gonna feel hollow. Like when Macbeth does get the crown, he immediately feels paranoid about losing it, right?
right,
Because of what the witches said, and like he's uncertain
right.
and all these sort of things. So
And how you got there,
and
like those
exactly, you didn't,
demons are with you.
right, the guilt, right, of like I didn't earn this, I killed the king to become the king. So it really is basically that. There's not a lot of the other things that Macbeth sort of can deal with as a play, because they do strip it a lot down. So I actually like the stripped down nature of it. I think it's an interesting take in that respect. I really like the look of this film. Like I
Hmm.
mentioned, there's a lot of very expressionistic camera angles, a lot of close-ups too. So it's sort of like this juxtaposition between those two things. And
It's like
some
a
of the state.
museum piece almost,
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
this could be playing
beautiful.
in a MoMA gallery with no sound or like some
Yeah.
sound, and you'll be totally drawn into it.
Yeah, and the visual nature of some of the choices, the scene, for example, of the famous cauldron scene,
Right.
Boil and Bubble, when the witches kind of appear, is just in a room that just slowly fills up with water, sort of like a foot of water, and then all the witches and the magic sort of is there. It's not sort of set in the woods with a cauldron or in all these different ways that it's staged. Thought that was brilliant. Even the witches
Right.
themselves, which is there are three of them in the play, but here it's just played by one actor,
She's
who does an
amazing, Catherine Hunter.
incredible job. And they do all these different things with like morphing her into different like kind of gargoyle like
Yeah.
what's it called, like staging poses and things. She turns into birds, are a big way to show the witches. And there's awesome, and the first time you see her, she's like reflected in a pool, and there's sort of like three, which is sort of the allusion to the original three witches that were in the Shakespeare play. So little sort of visual decisions like that. Oh, and two, I just want to call out as well the famous dagger sequence
Oh yeah.
where he's saying, "Oh, is Macbeth starts seeing visions of a dagger when he's like, should I kill the king?" And then the dagger, and he has this whole monologue about, this is a sign that then I have to do this horrible deed, and this is what's in my future. This is what I need to do. Again, with his ambition, but there isn't a dagger there. They just very subtly lose like a door handle that sort of looks like a dagger in the distance.
Hmm.
So it's not, sometimes there'll be an actual dagger that appears, or
Hmm.
like in the Fassbender one, it's a lot more of a literal sort of like dagger that he sees. But I love that. Like the visual flair in this is just so great. And it sort of is interesting that, now that the Coens have separated, sort of noticing what Joel does versus Ethan and
Right.
what things they do. And I think a lot of the surreal elements of some of these Coen brothers films that I like so much when they were together clearly now is Joel, I have to say, because there's so many of these really interesting surreal and impressionistic elements in this film. So I think
And
this movie, I really enjoy it as again, I'm a person who likes Shakespeare and really likes Macbeth in particular, and I think this is a very interesting take, especially visually, is sort of what sells this for me.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I feel like I need to go and watch more Shakespearean stuff to really compare. But yeah, the Joel thing really feels spot on. Like the surrealism, but also like the stripped back nature of it, but like really the nuanced pickup of like visual elements to tell a story, but not make a big deal about it. But it's there. But
Mhm.
that's such a yeah. I had the same thing that because you see that in their movies, and clearly he's the one who's bringing that. So
Right.
I wish they would come back together. Because
Yeah.
what is missed from this, and granted, it's like a stage play kind of mounted in like a movie. It's obviously a classic, period epic, very stylistic. But what is not in the movie, which is in all Joel and Ethan Coen movies, is this buoyancy. And it
Hmm.
doesn't even have to be, a fun subject matter. It can be pretty dark, and their movies are always dark, actually, and quite
Hmm.
brutal and gruesome. But there's always a sense of energy to them, and this movie doesn't have that. And if it were not for the visual display, and Denzel is very good as well,
He's great. Yeah.
there's a distance, It's not like a typical Coen Brothers movie that you just cannot quit it. You just
Right.
are totally taken in and taken over by it. So I miss that.
Yeah, and then you look at what Ethan is doing, which is basically just that. I mean, I haven't seen his latest film, which just came out, Honey Don't, but I did see Drive Away Dolls. I think it was last year. Whenever that came out, it was just dreadful. It was terrible, but it was all just that, like zany
Right.
sort of madcap fun, but it just wasn't that fun, and it was almost like you couldn't take anything seriously. So the guys, they need to come back together.
They need to come back together.
And I think the weakness in this film, honestly, is Frances McDormand.
Right.
And the weakness of at least the one Ethan film that I saw was the screenplay also written by his wife. So it seems like they've chosen their spouses over the brotherly connection, and then it's doing both of them wrong. So, that's not to say that they should get divorced from their wives, but I think they work better together as opposed to with their spouses. But yeah, Frances McDormand in this movie just doesn't really work for me. I mean, this character is one of my favorite like Shakespeare characters. She's so interesting in terms of her ambition, and there are these great monologues that she has, especially the unsex me now one where it's like take
Hmm.
away all the womanness of me so I can do these horrible deeds. And I didn't really buy from her that she was casting aside any femininity that she had. She seemed sort of this cold character from the beginning. So that major scene where she's trying to like get rid of all that makes her a woman so she can do these horrible deeds. I'm like, well, you seem sort of like this cold-hearted bitch anyway before. So, I don't really get this. And another thing that I think is important to this story too is the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Like they have to be in love and want this
You don't
together.
feel
And
that.
yeah, the connection, it's like both of them are sort of like have the same drive for ambition, and that's what bonds them, and that's why they're in love, and they make a good pair. Here, I don't see any chemistry between the two of them at all.
No.
I think Denzel is carrying a lot of the weight of how, the things that the film is wrestling with more so than her, who yeah, I just think just and she is a good actress. I mean, as much as I rolled my eyes for the people who are listening could see it at the fact that yeah, she did win 3 Oscars, which again is crazy. She is a great actress, and I enjoy her in a lot of different things. But this just it doesn't work.
No. I mean, she's a very good actress in my mind, but she
Yeah,
sort of found her brand and niche, which is sort of this, cold and tough with vulnerability and flaws and, will tell you the way it is kind of persona, which is so hard to shake now. And so you just see that no matter what she does, which is kind of unfair, I guess, to say that, but that's kind of how I feel, and sounds like you feel that way as well. It'll take a lot to shed that, just the way she's trying to shed whatever she's trying to shed. It's very hard for the audience to shed that and show up and
yeah.
take her as, what she's playing. So that's sort of what's happened to her. This is not Darkman, which I
No,
was
that's
like,
right. Yeah.
what are you doing here? Oh my gosh. And you look great.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Maybe she's stuck in this kind of rut as well. So yeah, so overall, I think this is a good sort of adaptation of Macbeth. It's not again not one of my favorites. I wouldn't put it as an amazing Shakespeare adaptation, but it's interesting enough that if especially if folks like the play or are interested in Shakespeare on film, I do think it's worth watching of the different ways
Mm,
that Joel's interpreted the story and again boiled it really down to its essence, and the visual stuff like you were saying really should be in a museum, and
yeah.
it's so beautiful, but I think it also serves a story and the claustrophobic nature of it where
Yeah.
Macbeth sort of feels trapped in the deeds that he's done and the path that the fates have laid before him, all these things. So it's not just style for style's sake. But yeah, I think maybe the message of at the end of the day with this is just like the brothers has got to get back together. Like just have the wives can hang out for a weekend or something. They need it to just have their own solo kind of session. And yeah, I'm hopefully it'll happen. They'll be reunited. Oasis did it. Those brothers came back together after 15 years. So maybe the Coens can do that too. And I will be first in line for the next Coen brothers movie, as opposed to the Coen solo efforts are just not as good.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, that wraps our movie selections for Denzel Washington. What our next section is, which is a fun one, what would you want to see Denzel do next?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like we've said, his career is very long. He's done a lot of different things, and the things that I think now in his old age that I enjoy seeing from him. Even though again he can do great dramatic works, even like we just said with the Macbeth film. I like when he does more of like the the pulpy, fun sort of B movies, like the Equalizer films. Again, I think those harken back more to that time of closer to like Crimson Tide or his other films with Tony Scott were also sort of like kind of pulpy,
Mm,
blockbuster type movies as opposed to serious kind of dramas. And I think The Gladiator, honestly, his performance in it at least, had that sense of fun in it, even though
right.
maybe the movie again was not perfect, but I want him to do more of those sort of things, more kind of like four quadrant,
Mm,
blockbuster fun films where he can give his like cool sort of,
mm,
sometimes over the top a bit Denzel performance like he was doing in Gladiator. So that I'd like to see him sort of go back into that. Now I don't know what that would be, and maybe we don't make him like that anymore, like we keep saying. Maybe Crimson Tide 2. I mean, they made Top Gun 2. I want to see Crimson Tide 2, and where maybe a new person. So now he's the old, curmudgeon-y guy, and there's some new
that
upstart
could be
guy who can
fun.
maybe Crimson Tide 2. Just throwing it out there into the universe. What about you? What would you like to see Denzel do?
I like what you said. Although I think there are few actors or actresses right now who can make like a drama picture, but that's also four quadrant and brings
Mm,
people in. So I want him to work with, a top tier director. He's never worked with Spielberg or Scorsese. Like that
mm.
would be amazing. Or somebody younger and upcoming and work with them and make like an amazing like drama movie. And I want him, since I opened this episode with that, I want him and Meryl to be together in it. They worked together in Manchurian Candidate, but they
Right,
barely had any scenes together.
right.
I would love for the two of them to be together in sort of this epic drama movie. It doesn't have to be not period, but just like a
Mhm.
really good drama film together. That would be lights out.
That would be fun. I actually would be excited for that too. Yeah, you're right. They weren't really on screen very much in that.
No,
And that film kind of sucks too. But they
I
can't
like
all be
that
winners. You
movie.
you liked it?
Yeah,
I think it's hard to remake a classic and make it good. But
that's also true.
you know,
Yeah.
well, what about us? What are we doing next, Karan? What's the film and who is the next actor or director that we're covering?
Oh my gosh. So I guess we are in the big leagues now, as I said in the opening of the episode. But PTA has a new movie, one battle after another. So we're going to be covering that movie and also covering Leo and his, filmography and our top six movies for Leo. So very excited about that.
That's gonna be great. Hopefully, we get a lot of return of the '90s more. I feel like now I just want, I want to after watching Crimson Tide and Philadelphia, I'm like I just want more '90s movies. So hopefully, we'll talk a lot more about those '90 films. And I'm really excited for the new PTA as well. Like that movie looks amazing. So we'll be back covering that new film and Leonardo DiCaprio on the 1st of October. So make sure you see one battle after another, and then you can follow along with our review. So thank you everyone for listening. You can follow us here on YouTube. Please make sure to subscribe. Also leave a like and a comment on the video because that helps people find us. But if you don't want to watch us, but you want to listen, we're also available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to find us there and also rate and review us there so new listeners can find us on the podcast platform. So with that, I think we can call it an episode, Karan.
All right. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye. King Kong got. Ugh, I'll do it again. What's the thing now? I've got
King
myself
Kong ain't
confused.
got shit
Ain't got shit
on
on
me.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. King Kong. Oh my gosh, why is this so hard for me? My God. Ain't is not a word I use in my life. I
Oh,
think that's the
okay, okay.
problem.
Yeah. No, no, yeah. You ain't used to it. It's fine.
No. Okay,
Wait,
one more time.
okay, hold on. Let me get still then.
King Kong got ain't shit on me.
You messed it up.
Ain't got shit on me. Oh
Ain't
my
got.
gosh.
Do you want me to do it?
No,
Or you
I'll
got
do it.
it?
I'll do
You
one.
got it.
If I can't do it this time, then you're doing it.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Okay.